80% chance.
Are we live?
Hey, Jay.
We should be live. I've been told we should be live. I'm going to hang up on you now. All right. Throw
Throw too far.
All right.
What if we're not live? No one's going to tell us.
Yeah, now I don't know. I can see it light up over there. Anyway, welcome. Oh, yeah, I should start, because this has to be edited. I'll start a little clearer. Welcome to the Plus Party, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our watch-along of episode 2 of the Imagineering story. We're also doing this live. We're live in a bunch of places. In case you don't know what we're up to, we're going to watch live the second episode of the Imagineering story on Disney+. That's the one that's titled What Would Walt Do? I'm Tom Corliss. Joining me, Nick Cicero.
Hello.
And Eric Wolf, right?
Hey,
Wolf is the last name?
I only knew his last name.
You only knew his
Yes.
last name? You only knew he was Wolf?
Yes.
Okay, fine. So what we do in this case is literally, it is what it sounds like. We're going to watch the episode and talk about it while it's on the television here. And if you want to watch along at home, you can fire up your Disney Plus and you can watch along with us, or you can just listen to a commentary. Listen to this as basically like a commentary track. If you
Yeah.
So that's how this is going to work. So I think, should we just get started?
Yeah,
Should we
let's
start the party? All right. So here we go. I'm going to count everybody down at home in case they want to line up the episode here with us.
20. 19.
For those
8.
For those of you watching live, we are going to do, not only are we doing episode 2, so we're going to do episode 2, then we're going to do a short review, and then we're going to do episode 3, and then a short review of episode 3. We're catching up a little this week because I was in Paris for a couple days. So here we go. I'm going to count you down. I'm going to count to 3. When I hit 3, we're going to hit play on episode 2 of the Imagineering.
Okay, when you hit 3.
When I say 3, we're going to hit play.
Episode 2. Okay.
Episode 2.
Yes.
All right. I'm
Who's
ready.
on first? All right. 1, 2, 3.
Episode 2.
Episode 2. There's the Disney Plus logo.
Plus logo.
Yes, and we're beginning
When Walt
episode
passed
2.
away at
We
the
should
end
raise the
of
volume.
1966, it was like a terrible shock to all the people who used his enthusiasm to fire.
This is
them
much
up.
lower than all the other
We had
shows
to
on
fire
Disney Plus.
ourselves up.
Is it?
It was a whole different thing.
Based on how much I have to
We
raise
had
the
a board of
volume.
directors that
So we're
was
starting
not
off
quite
after
sure where
the
they were
aftermath
going.
of
They were always
Walt's
trying to say, what would Walt do? What would Walt do? Instead of what will we do?
Spoiler alert.
And it was
Yes.
kind
Walt
of a
Disney
frustrating
died.
time for the creative people.
Oh,
because
yeah, okay.
many times
This is based on real
ideas
life.
and projects were killed because they weren't quite sure which direction
Is
to
that loud
go.
enough?
Yeah. So Richard Sherman is telling us a little bit of the background of the situation.
He's setting up What Would Walt Do, an episode all about what they did immediately following Walt passing. And this, I love that every episode has a different opening. And so this one's Cinderella Castle and Spaceship Earth. Yeah, it's really great. I'm glad they did a different thing.
I shouldn't have hit skip intro.
Oh. Now you get to see the walls in nowhere.
1967.
That's when you were born,
Yeah.
A few days after Walt's death, Roy asked top administrative finance people to join him at the studio first thing one morning. He stands in front of the
Tomorrowland,
group,
1967.
doesn't say anything for a while, he just looks around.
Walt mostly saw
Very
that
slowly,
for completion.
obviously very
That's a
sad.
beautiful model.
He said,
They were wrapping
you know,
things
the
up
world
in
has lost a
67.
fabulous individual, a great leader. He said, I've lost a brother.
I'd love just the
He
people
said, the
from
creative
that
people in this
model.
company have lost their leader.
Yeah.
I mean, that
So I
model's
want to
pretty
impress
awesome.
on you when you leave this
I mean,
room.
it's, all these are
Be
amazing.
very easy on these people.
The sad
until
thing,
they
most
fill
of them
the
destroyed.
voids that
Yeah,
Walt
they didn't
is
think
going
to save
leave.
them. They're like,
There's
oh,
going to be
project's
a million
done.
in all of your
Just
areas.
threw it away.
So go back and try to help those creative people get through
Wow.
this
There's the
very
model that you
difficult
see other
time.
people
And that's
move
what
in
we
Progress City.
You never see, like, you never think about that. I mean, that's so gigantic. They show them working underneath
Guests
it.
saw few
Oh,
signs
big,
of reason
yeah.
in the happiest
Well, back
place
then,
on
before
earth.
computers, the model
To
was
honor
so
Walt,
important.
the Imagineers turned their attention toward projects already in motion. In the corner of New Orleans Square, a grand Victorian manor sat vacant since 1963. Guests only grew more curious about what might go inside. The top WED talent concentrated on finishing the most anticipated attraction yet. A labor of love Walt had been planning for years.
That just said make it years. I mean, they were doing it.
But the stretching rooms were there.
Right.
We're going to bring ghosts from all over the world, and we're making it very attractive to them, hoping
This is
they'll
from
want to
the
come and stay at
Disneyland
Disneyland, so we're putting in wall-to-wall cobwebs.
I think is required
With
watching
guarantee of
for
creaky doors and
Disney
creaky
parks.
floors.
Probably the most quintessential of all the specials.
Walt started his own version of an R&D lab when he urged Yale
I
Green
mean,
to
he
simply
previews
think
Mansion
things
and
up.
Pirates. I mean, it's
An amateur magician, Yale mixed
No.
popular mechanics
It was on
with
DVD. It's
special
on
effects
YouTube.
wizardry.
Okay.
He tinkered with lighting, blew gusts of wind, and played with smoke and mirrors. Illusions appeared as another design principle in the Imagineering bag of tricks.
I love how they show all the
Yale and I spent a whole year doing nothing but reading ghost books and going to the movies because Walt let us do whatever we wanted. We were like a couple of kids in a playpen.
Won't let them do it.
See,
We
we're not a
take
big
Walt
fan of the
over
museum
and do full-scale
No.
mock-ups of all of our illusions. But then
Raleigh,
the World's Fair came
incredibly
along, and then the
talented,
Haunted Mansion was put on hold.
I don't think for a Disney audience
Walt
that
considered
stuff
and discarded
works.
many ideas.
But that's what was great
He
about
wasn't
Walt. Like he
pleased
knew
with
what
the
their talents
rundown,
were. He knew how to
dilapidated exterior.
like
A
hone
butler
that
guided
into
Walt
what
through
he
tour,
wanted,
or a museum of
or what was going to work.
But
And that's
one
what Walt
idea
never
stuck.
bid on that. I
A
think
queue
it
line
just was too
disguised
weird.
as a mysterious foyer.
They made a.
Well, this is our elongating stretching
Oh,
wall.
See with the weird
Yeah.
And in this
That was the
room, we
first
also
of the
have some
Marvel
stretching
Disney
portraits.
Yeah.
park crossovers.
It was a thing that
So imagine this is
suffered a great deal by
1965.
too many
Those are
art
the
directors,
finished
I think.
stretching
There were a lot
room
of great ideas
portraits that Mark did.
Get lost in this kind of a mill. Then, unfortunately, Walt died, and then everybody thought he was buried in there or frozen in there or something like that. So finally, we got in and put an attraction in.
Welcome, foolish mortals.
This is another
Haunted mansion.
special people should watch, the Haunted Mansion opening.
Your
With E.J. Peeker, who I can never forget. She never was famous beyond this,
Magical
really.
thing. I want this mansion to look
All
safe
these
on the
boys,
outside,
the young
giving
Osmond
into the
boys
Yeah.
chasing this
foyer
older
where
blonde
the world of the physics
I don't
of
blame
everyday
them.
life disappears. Suddenly the room is stretching and there's no windows and no doors. And how are we going
They
to
probably showed this, yeah.
I remember seeing this not
This, I think it's also on YouTube. You could find
This
it.
is what this
Actually,
adventure is going to be
was it
about.
during
It's
our
going
Back
to
to
be
the
a
Future?
little
I probably
scary,
showed it.
Yeah,
funny,
yeah.
and it's so
Where the clip where
seamlessly
Kurt
done.
Russell walks us
Yeah.
through the yeah.
Do it again.
So like the Osmonds, E.J. Peeker in there. There's yeah. We
So
watched
good.
we
That's
watched
really
portions
such a
of
great
this.
ride. But while everyone's on their way over there, I thought you wanted to see a film on how it was built and how some of the tricks were done.
I would.
A system was developed by the people at Disney to control the movements of the ghostly inhabitants of the Haunted Mansion through the use of scalloped edge discs. Roller cams followed the
Did all that
depression
with
from shoulders,
scallops, could you
producing
believe
movements that helped to bring our spooky tenants to life. If you'll excuse the pun.
There's Bob Chapek. There he is.
Animation requires a certain knowledge of action and analyzing action and
It just
trying
looks
to
so
get
convoluted.
as
all
much
the movements
It's
personality
so-
into
it's
the
so
character. He always had a say.
Yeah.
Who
Anybody can make a
figured
move,
this out?
but it takes a good
I just
animator
sat.
to
I
make
don't.
it
I
live.
still can't believe in the 1960s
Half the magic is
that
behind the
artists
scenes.
sat and
There
figured
was
out
a spirit of
robots. It's
invention,
still the most mind-blowing
crazy
thing.
kind of non-linear way of thinking. A lot of those special effects in the attractions were based on projection systems.
All the electronics that had to be hidden backstage and like
Things as
just go to the
rudimentary
right
as overhead
place.
projectors with
The
crazy
magic
mechanisms that sat on top of them to make images appear to
There's
move.
Hatbox Ghost.
Very old school vaudeville
Someone's
gags,
caught.
all kinds of
There he
cool
is.
stuff that Yale kind of cobbled together in the back room.
Even those things are so much more complicated than I thought. Like just the tombstone shaking back and forth, that mechanism is ridiculous. Oh look, back when that worked, she'll actually vanish. Right? Will she
Most
vanish?
magicians
No, she's
don't like
stuck
to
on.
reveal their
She's still
secrets,
stuck on.
but this is something called Pepper's Ghost. And a Pepper's Ghost illusion has been around for at least 150
So they
years.
granted them
and it
access to
never ceases
film
to amaze
in the
people.
ballroom, but you'll notice they
Yale
won't
Gracie
show you the
mastered this
actual
effect
figures.
even
They'll never
in the
turn them.
ballroom.
Yeah, I noticed that.
I don't want you to see it.
Really thinking they were gonna do
It's one of those things they're very protective of. Is that scene.
Imagineers created this 90-foot-long antebellum
Specifically, they don't want you to
with
see the
multiple
figures
effects
underneath
and
the
set
thing.
pieces.
Yeah.
The guests travel on an elevated pathway and look through a
Yeah, but there's just something
30-foot-high
about it. They
pane of
just
glass.
don't want you
The
to
animated
see it.
figures are above and below the scene in darkened rooms, but when illuminated, they appear in the room as illusions in the
It's
space.
just probably so dirty.
I think
I'm
the
not
beauty
cleaning
of the
this. Just
ballroom
film
scene
out
is
here.
that it's not full of complex technology. It has an authenticity. It
really
creates an
wanted to see
atmosphere
the
of
underneath the American
reality, and it doesn't feel
Oh,
fake.
that's we got to do that.
It's timeless.
Yeah, backstage magic. Many years ago. This is also my like they had to bolt them into a harness to
For the
hold their heads
disembodied
completely
head of a
still,
gypsy fortune
and
teller,
then
Yo Gracie
project
chose
it onto
to film a woman
I mean,
reciting
insane.
an incantation, and then project that film onto a bust of her face. He cast fellow Imagineer Leota Toombs because of her exotic high cheekbones. Sculptor Blaine Gibson needed a fresh mold.
Blaine came to my mom, Leota Toombs.
If
He leaned her back in the chair,
Imagineers who
and they
created
covered her
these
face
effects
with a
look at
sticky,
the
gooey
computers,
material
technology
called
that we have now,
alginate.
kind of
They
wish
put
they
straws
had
in
that,
her
or
nose
did they
so she could
enjoy the
breathe.
fact that they
The
had
problem
to
was that it was
really-
way too
There's
runny.
gotta be
It
joy
actually
in
slipped down her
Yeah.
face into her bra. And
'Cause,
poor
I mean,
Blaine
that
said, I
I've
don't
seen
think I
guests
should
like come
have a
through and be like,
sculpture
how
that.
is that done? Like now people are like, oh yeah, I've seen like in our local town they have projection mapping things. Yeah, but like back then it's like, there's a head in that ball. Like that has to be incredibly satisfying, creative.
And she had to have her head
Well, it's
absolutely
harder
still
to-
because it's going to be
it's harder
projected
to
onto the statue.
amaze
And so
people,
we
I
went ahead
guess,
and shot it,
these days,
having her talking.
It's not. You can still do it. You just have to try. I think now they just rely so much on existing stuff. Like now, they're not inventing new ride systems anymore. So like it's Rise of the Resistance, Ratatouille, Runaway Railway.
Today's
They're all just
artists
trackless
and
rides. It's like,
engineers credit
and
the
we're
Matter
catching up.
Yoga
I mean, Honey
experience
Hut opened in
as the first known
2000.
public display
That was
of projection
19
mapping
years ago.
technology.
It's old technology. It's not
I have
new.
two girls, and they were quite young when my mom passed away. I would often say, there's Grandma, wave to Grandma. And I could hear people around me going, what a weirdo, telling me children about demonic images. My parents actually met at the studio. My mom was an in-betweener, and my father was an animator on Pinocchio. In fact, their very first date was the premiere of Pinocchio. In the 60s, she went to work at WED. So Disney was definitely in my blood. I was born and raised on Disney.
Now Kim is designing planters.
I also love the little Leota at the end because
that
that's
art
actually
today.
Mom's voice.
Two planters
Oftentimes
with
when I
little
walk through
white
the park
spires
early
coming
in the morning, it's very quiet and there's no guests in the park. And I hear her little voice down there doing the hurry back, hurry back. That's really very emotional for me because I still have an opportunity to hear her almost every day.
I love this shot of the billboard. It's so good. There's a pin of that though. I don't remember which event it was. It was a couple of years ago. It wasn't the 50th or before the 50th. Maybe it was the. Oh, it wasn't even an anniversary.
And now, ladies
they
and
did
gentlemen, a progress report
Disneyland
on the
did a
new
whole
Walt
summer
Disney
of pins,
World
and one of
in
them was the
Florida.
old Disneyland billboard.
Here are the aerial photographs and survey maps,
Frank and
the
roller
plans and models
Yeah.
that were the beginning
would
of
have been there
Walt
all the
Disney's
time.
greatest dream.
Without Walt's guidance, the impending expansion was a make-or-break proposition. Management played it
There's
safe,
Western
at
River
least
Expedition in the back of the model.
Walt's bold vision of Epcot was put on hold. The Imagineers focused on a second Magic Kingdom, but one much bigger and in the middle of nowhere.
I don't
They,
look
they,
on
they said
myself as a
Anaheim was the
replacement
middle
for
of
Walt,
nowhere
but I
when
do
they
think
built
that
that.
we're taking
I don't understand
instinctively the
that
same
comparison.
direction. We had rather long leashes,
yellow
and
exit
if Walt was
versus the
walking
castle.
north, he could go east and west considerably, but none of us could go south.
The transition was very difficult
I'd like
because
to know if it really
Roy
ended
O.
up
Disney,
there.
who Walt's brother, who was about to retire, had to take
Roy just
over
walked past the
again and
animatronics for
figuring
Mickey
out
Mouse Review.
one, how to
That's the Donald
finance
that's now
this
in the Grand
project,
Fiesta Tour.
which was huge,
Same
and two,
amount.
how to organize.
I mean, they replaced
so
parts over
there
time, but
wasn't all
maybe
this
some of it's
competition
still there.
for who who's in charge.
Tokyo does great
Roy
maintenance. It's very
commanded
likely something
everyone
that is still.
to turn their total energies in one direction.
You know, think of the
was
things
to
that
get
figure
Walt
has
Disney
seen.
World open. Nothing else matters.
The opening of Disney World went to the opening of Tokyo.
This was swampland with no roads. Sinkholes dotted the property. A high water table caused drainage problems.
Learning about
Zoning
this
permits
part
and
of Walt
building
Disney
codes
World.
threatened
This
the
is what
project's
really
feasibility before construction even began.
more
Roy
like a real
wrestled
family.
permission from the
Like,
state
this is what got me
legislature
intrigued.
to create Disney's
You know,
own
we always came as a
municipality,
family.
free from government
I love
interference.
Disney World, but this
Disney
got
would
me into
control
the
and operate an
real behind
independent
the scenes,
city.
like loving Walt Disney.
Yeah, like Disneyland was an accomplishment, but this was. No one had ever seen anything like
You don't work 40 hours
like this
a week.
kind of
You work 40 and worry 40.
Yeah, I just got so
It was
intrigued
on the
by
way.
the story of how it
Should we
happened,
go
how
on
the
with
land was
this
bought
Florida
up,
project
how they
now?
made relationships with the
We're
government.
doing it for the next generation.
Roy was under tremendous pressure building the infrastructure,
I always tried to
all the
envision
utilities that we had
flying
to put
over
in
that area
ourselves,
before it was
power company,
developed.
telephone
Like,
company,
there was nothing
all of the
there.
water
But he saw
control
something there,
activities so
yeah.
that we didn't pollute
They were
the
driving
area
around
south of the property by having
contemporary.
canals
Just
and
the, I
dikes
think it was
and
just the
others.
elevator shaft.
That was a very challenging project.
Walt
City
intended
City
to
Hall
develop
got
the
done pretty
property
quick.
as a city of
People
the
were already
future,
complaining.
not only as a showcase, but also as a workplace. He dreamt of a functional hidden infrastructure.
Over the years, it's certainly leaked out. There is this underground city, and I wonder what's down there.
I think
What do
Everyone
they do
knows
there?
this at this point.
Yeah.
Whether they be,
It had to
I guess,
be in
I mean,
there.
It has to be, yeah. I mean, it's still this creative, amazing thing.
This is
Yeah.
the thing they really
There's
are
Phil
like, heard
Holmes.
about it. Is
Phil
it
Holmes
true?
made it
If so,
in.
I'd love to see it.
Current vice president of Disney's Hollywood studio.
We call it a utilidor. On any given day, you know, coming and going, there's probably 10 to 15,000 cast members.
The timing of this episode.
It literally is a city.
Because if you remember,
This
there was
was
that
what
whole
Walt
Twitter
Disney does the best
episode
way
where
to keep
someone
from
was
Disneyland
upset
to Disney
that
World,
there were like
solving
people in the
what were
wrong land
fairly
wearing
significant problems in
backpacks
his mind.
in their costume.
He
And
loved
a
the
lot of
fact that we
cast
were going to
members
have a
snapped
basement.
back at him, but
Because
then
the one thing he didn't like
a few
about
days
Disneyland
later,
is
this
the
comes
cast
out, and
members had
here
to
are all
go
these
through
people, these
different areas out of
incredible
costume.
people who built
This
Disney World
way
saying
they
like
could be
Walt
underground
didn't
and
want to
come
see
out
the
into
wrong
their
people in the
land.
wrong land, and so that would never
Engineers
happen.
raised
And
the
it pretty
ground
much
surface
destroyed every cast
and
member's
excavated
argument.
from man-made
There is no argument. Like, I understand. I
steel
know, like,
pilings
working at Disney
reinforced a
World,
10-acre
money
cement
isn't great,
labyrinth.
and guests can be
Major
terrible. I
engineering
completely
job.
understand.
They could
But
run
there are
all the
expectations,
water
especially if you have that
system,
passion, like
electrical
you're also a
system,
fan and you work at
system,
Disney World.
all that.
I think I would have that level of respect to know I'm not going to go up in my costume in the wrong land. I'm not going to like go out with my
You'll see
purse
big
that's out
pipes
of
that run
time
through this
period.
place. There are
Like, I'm
these
not going to do
HVAC
those
systems.
things. Like that.
Think about
They
all
built
the
this whole
limitations to the Magic
tunnel
Kingdom.
and
There
this
are
HVAC
these
system that doesn't
literal
actually
major
work.
receptacles
I love when he
down.
says the smell is
It
contagious.
travels
It's
through
absolutely.
pneumatic tubes.
Ask any
One
cast
collection
member; they will
point.
tell you
No
how
need for
smelly
trucks
it is
to
in
come
some
anywhere
places
close
now.
to the guests.
Doesn't
And the sights, the smells, everything is whisked away.
yeah, I mean, it was
It
built
works as well today as it
specifically
did,
for that.
You know, almost 50 years ago.
I love getting to see that and how they mark all the walls and everything so you know where you are. I
Less
never
than
thought
a year
about that
before
aspect
opening,
of it.
It's
the
ingenious.
creative
It's
pressure
absolutely
grew.
ingenious.
Back in Glendale, California, Wed Enterprises
People who
scoured
just
the
thought
studio
on
and Disney
a level
for
I
every
cannot
available
fathom
talent.
thinking.
Do you think
Mom came
My
home
brain
one day
doesn't
and
work.
said they're looking
was that
for
something Walt
kids to
ever
be
knew
trained in the
about?
model
Like,
shop.
yeah,
He came up
He
with
came up with
We
That was
that.
his
had
idea.
Okay.
a common
Utilidors he
bond
wanted. He
in
knew
that we
from
were
the second they
Disney
said they were going
brats,
to do it.
as we would
He's
call
like, I don't
ourselves.
want
We'd
them
grown
crossing
up
the wrong
Disney,
lines.
kind of like in the old days
That
when
might
a
have been like the
carpenter
first thing he
trains their
came up
child to be a
Like,
carpenter.
it might have been like first thing, like the first thing he designed. He's like tunnels. Roy, tunnels. Like, tunnels. He's like, yeah, tunnels.
Model pieces and how to
Series of
paint them. And
levels.
It was really like a big
And I'm gonna build levels.
Everyone was in huge spirits. We
It's
were
like
opening
Kramer, Walt
brand
Disney's
new
like
park.
Kramer.
We were
Well, except all the
realizing
ideas
Walt's
work.
dream of opening Disney World. Everyone was really doing it in his honor, in his memory.
This is Maple, where the information from Walt Disney Enterprises is brought together with the electrical and mechanical working drawings to formulate the rides.
After the 1964 World's Fair, a dedicated division handled the machine work.
There are more
Adjacent
animatronics
to
being
Wed
built there than
Enterprises,
they've probably
Maple
done
was
in the
built
last year.
with the profits from Mary Poppins and named
Just
accordingly.
like 5 years.
Oh, yeah.
The Maple
Just in
shop
that shop.
was tasked with building all of the
That's
audio
amazing to
electronic
think
figures.
about how they took the profits
They
from
were
one film
given a
and
global
built the whole
idea
thing.
of something that needed to be made. And
But think about, like,
the guys
Snow
would
White
get
built
together and
the
say,
studio.
okay, let's try this,
And
let's
then
make
Mary
this, let's
Poppins
make
built
that.
the Maple.
And they would make prototypes.
Yeah, they would put back into
Disneyland
the
was
company,
designed
in
and
that
built, and
Yeah.
the knowledge of that was not recorded on paper or things. It's all up in people's minds.
This
That
is amazing.
In other words,
that they didn't have
everything was
those-
custom
They
made.
just
Custom
put things
designed.
together and then just walk
What do you
away.
Yeah.
We're like building
It's like
a
kinda how they put
one-time
together this
Formula
studio.
One race car.
Just kind of threw it together.
Somebody-
Except
walked
this
away.
doesn't work.
Oh.
That's the
Put
difference.
parts together,
Yeah.
and he
No
gets
idea how this
figure,
is laid out.
maybe with a little trial and error, that did this. And that was the way it worked.
That was not the way to open Walt Disney World in 1971. The
Oh,
goal
Henry.
was to have all of the shows being run on digital computers. The animators weren't exactly thrilled.
Mark-
Once again,
Mark-
oh my God, the computer's going to take our jobs.
Albertino with all the
It took a little
country
hand holding and going out to lunch and
storyboards.
having a beer
Mark
to
doing
convince
his art.
key animators, learn how to use this animator's box, turn the knobs, push the buttons, turn the lights, and you will program a show. Trust me, guys, you will be happy.
Of the 23 attractions, most were replicas from
Honestly, if I
Disneyland.
could learn to
But
do
Liberty
like one
Square,
cool
the
job
only new
at Disney,
exclusive
it'd be,
land,
like,
was
programming
themed
all
after
the
colonial America,
that'd
which
be great.
reflected Walt's patriotism. Concept artist Sam McKim, a distinguished Korean War veteran and the original Imagineer that painted Mr. Lincoln, shared Walt's love for America.
Disney had a personal touch that was full of enthusiasm. He just welled up inside him when he got caught up on anything. Walt had a feeling of
I think it's
making
cool.
contact with people
It's
he wanted to tell
a
story
neat
to.
thing they did. They
He
built
was
a lot of
broad-faced
animatronics. I mean,
in everything he did.
sculpting
The Hall
all
of
those
Presidents
heads.
promised a swell of American pride.
Herculean effort.
Imagineers believed
Oh, it's-
when overcome with emotion, the
It's always
audience
been
will
one of my
suspend
favorite
disbelief.
things. Absolute favorite.
Over the course of 2
I
years
just-
and much
I love
Not
research,
enough of it.
Blaine Gibson sculpted all
Yeah.
36
I mean,
heads.
that's amazing.
If I'm doing
One
a
guy
head,
did
I don't
sculpt all the
leave that
presidents. I
head
mean,
until
yeah,
I
it's
feel
insane.
that this
There will
guy
never
is
be
looking back
another
at me
Blaine
that he's
Gibson.
alive.
I'd look at that.
We've given the implication of life. The audience is going to pick
There's
that
no
up and
way
finish it.
they'd be this ambitious today. No,
Surely God would not have created
It's
such a
sad.
being as man with ability to
Even
grasp
with
the
Star
intent
Wars, I mean, we'll see Rise in a couple
to
weeks,
exist
but
only for a day.
I don't think there's nearly as many figures as the whole
Man
president.
was made for immortality.
What do you think there is? It's like
Well, that's it. They don't even build their own animatronics anymore, which I think is that's the real fun part.
yeah.
Things are different when you do it yourself.
Everyone
Now they don't want to do it because it's
even more
supposedly like 18
closely
to
as a
20
group,
million a figure.
helping each other with their projects, not having Walt there any longer to look over the
It's so
shoulder.
weird because it's like just go back to the.
We opened October 1st,
I don't know
1979.
if there's a way to go back. I think WDI is so much
Helicopters
smaller
flying
and
over
capable.
Fantasyland, drying the concrete
can't you
so
build
that
it for
the
less
guests
than
wouldn't
you pay somebody else?
get stuck in the concrete.
They
in Fantasyland.
outsource it. I don't know that
That's
there's
how close
people in
it was.
Imagineering that can build animatronics.
They were
guys who
projecting we
first
have
built it didn't know how either.
500,000
They just did
people.
it.
Because now it's been 11.
Opening
It's
day,
been
we only had
11 years.
10,000 guests, and that's counting all the comps and all the
Garner
bands coming in the back gate. And Wall Street said, well, they've done it, Disney's failed. And Roy was really nervous about it.
What we found out later is people were staying away because they thought it was going to be so crowded.
This sounds familiar, doesn't it?
We all realized that the project was a success and we were going to do all the things that Walt had envisioned for that 30,000
Country Jamboree
acres.
presented by Pepsi Cola and
Quite a
Frito
relief.
Lay.
May Walt Disney World bring joy
Love that
and
move by
grace
Pro.
and
That's
new
Nick's
knowledge
movie.
to all
It's
who
no
come to
end.
this happy place.
Roy was very, very concerned all through the development because he saw the immensity of the project and the increase in the cost that it was going to incur to do it right. He stuck with it, but it was very trying on him.
Charlie and I have been together in our business for 42 years now. He's my big brother.
This press conference feels so subdued. Like, it's so historical, but
It
it's
takes
so
a lot of
raw,
money.
really.
But
He was
Roy had
forced
faith
into
in me.
doing it. The Sentinel had outed
And I think
him.
that Roy has done a lot of things against his better
But
judgment.
you would think,
because
like,
he
how
felt
excited he was in
that I
those
wanted to do it.
videos when he
And most of
showed
our
things about the park. He
Well,
doesn't
this
have that
was just a
excitement
room
here.
of press. Like this, that footage, I don't think more people read about it in newspapers than saw it on television. Would be my guess.
Roy Disney.
It's not like that.
I would
film
guess they
really
showed
ever
like
happened.
stills on most
The
news
company had no
stations.
debt, and
Probably.
at the same
I don't think
time,
that footage aired
3
on a
months
ton of
after
news stations.
Walt Disney World opened, Roy died. And I think it was because he put everything into it for his brother. He promised his brother that he was going to do this, and he did.
3 months later, he's gone.
Those 5 years, I think, were the best years of my dad's life. He had stayed away from the creative decisions that his little brother made all those years, very consciously, and suddenly for those last 5 years, he was plunged into this incredible world of wed and creative decisions and the fun you guys have. I thank you for my dad, for giving him such a wonderful time, and for building such a great park.
So,
Peter Blake, the architectural editor of New York Magazine, recommends that all of New York City's town planning
This,
work
by the way,
be
is
turned
my
over to the Walt Disney Mickey Mouse
favorite
organization
clip about
because
Disney World.
they seem to be the only people
I
in
think it
America who are able to
summarizes
get
what
anything done.
happened so
Now, don't
perfectly.
laugh. When you look
That they had
around
just
at this new
accomplished
town they have built
something
here in
that
Central
no
Florida,
municipality
you will think he
could
is right.
fathom.
It is the most imaginative and most effective
Like
piece
a
of
private
urban planning
business
in America.
enterprise had like shown the world
Even
how
though
to do
Wedge Enterprises
transportation
achieved a
and lay out
resounding
land and
success,
roads.
they reached
It's-
another
it's
crossroads.
fascinating.
The beloved founders were gone.
and everything going
A
on
pair of
behind them,
non-family
the
insiders
the
stepped up
monorail,
as
the
stewards to
boat.
run the company in tandem. Don
Now I'd be
Tatum,
standing there, the
Roy's
monorail would be
protege,
stuck.
and
the boat couldn't leave the dock.
Walt's disciple.
There's a line of cars at the Contemporary because everyone's trying to just park at the Wave and walk to
I remember going in this conference room, and Card Walker comes in there and says words to the effect, "Well, okay, guys, what are you going to do
This is
next?"
such an interesting.
And I remember all our
piece of
hearts
the history of
collectively
the company.
sank.
Because
And that's
just
when
to
it dawned on us.
realize that
We're
the
out of
guys
the
coming in
energy
being
that
in
Walt
charge
left
had
us with.
no idea
Somebody's
what
going to have to
Card
figure
Walker
out
and
what the
Don
direction
Tatum are
is.
not.
And the president of the
good
company
loved
is not
figures.
prepared to tell us.
But wasn't Card like instrumental?
There's
in
such a
helping,
thing as
like,
momentum, of
instrumental in
course.
acquiring land
We'll never
and that-
replace Walt
that-
Disney.
that
It's
piece of
true,
it
there's
before
some of
Walt
us
Yeah, but
died,
as
right?
different
management,
opinions.
I don't
We
think
don't
they
have
were.
this central pivotal point of
I don't
Walt's
think the
supply,
WDI
but we
guys
still
got
follow
along
the
with
same
them
direction.
Yeah.
Card
John Hinch,
definitely more so
perhaps
than
the
Don.
closest connection to Walt himself,
Like, do you know
took the
enough
creative
about this
reins
time?
of
Like, would
Wedge
there have been
Enterprises.
somebody else that
He
should have
curated the vast
stepped up at that
stockpile
time?
of ideas
So I think it was a
that never
pretty
got
natural
thrown away.
progression. I think they knew what to do. They
When I was
lost
growing
Walt
up as a
and then they lost
teenager,
Roy.
we were not the leaders in the throw ride
There's no
arena.
more Disney's running
The
this
only
company.
thing at Disneyland for a teenage mentality was the Matterhorn, but Knott's Berry Farm had
Yeah, the
four
parks were the only thing that was working.
attractions, and then Magic Mountain opened, and it had many. We basically needed to examine again and say, okay, it's a time
It
for us
is
to catch up
interesting to put yourself in that
and
time.
go
Like,
beyond
you have
what the
no
competition has
singular
done.
vision. So hard. I mean, that
Many
happens to all of us. Like, that happens to me. Like, you have a
Disney
singular
parks with
goal, you work
childhood
so
and
hard to
lost
get there, you get
interest.
there.
To remain relevant, both parks needed
that
to
happens
increase
in
the
everybody's
element
lives.
of thrill.
They happen to this
The Imagineers revived an old John Hinch design for an indoor
Because now
roller
somebody's
coaster,
got to have the
something
idea.
Walt always
And so John, to his credit, just like they said, he dug through like what they had at least talked about at some points, and finally made Space Mountain.
We finally built Space Mountain, and we did it with a lot of artistic panache. So it's not like, okay, if you want a thrill ride, you're going to have to forego placemaking and story. We combine all of that together.
All personnel, clear the launch platform.
The biggest part of a roller coaster is the lift going up. It's the trepidation Did I make a mistake by going on this?
Of course, ours opened 75, Disneyland 77, but they're wildly different.
Roger. LB standby.
Our goal?
But then what's funny is they built the
stress and
Disneyland
anticipation.
The main thing that will reinforce the feeling of reassurance is people think they're going much faster than they are. Especially the younger people have this exhilaration of having passed through a threatening experience, even though it's a simulated one, and they feel much more alive.
When you survive, like John Hanks said, about the reassurance, and you walk out a survivor, it is fear minus death equals fun. That was great.
Teenagers approved. The turbulent speed and darkness of Space Mountain captured the public's fascination with the cosmos. But by the mid-70s, the country had suffered through the Vietnam War, the Watergate scandal, and an energy crisis. Economic growth fell while inflation rose. Amid the corporate
they
and
attempted to
government
make it the
distrust,
first thing designed on computer.
gambled on Walt Disney's
Didn't
last
work out.
freight train.
That's when Card Walker came to me and said, "What are we going to do about Epcot?"
All right, boys, here we go.
And that became my assignment. to
The
then
part
figure
everyone's
out
been waiting
how we
for.
took Walt's idea for a community
Time to
and
remember
turned
when
it into
things were
a
great.
park.
Well, it's interesting.
Hired
that
a
they
month
decided
before
to record it
Disneyland
all
opened,
and
Marty
Epcot,
Sklar
right?
first edited the newspaper sold on Main Street,
This
USA.
will happen.
He soon won favor as
Yeah,
Walt
and they
Disney's
realized they
personal
couldn't do a
scriptwriter.
city for reasons
Marty's
that
words
Celebration
became
shouldn't have
Walt's
happened
voice,
either. I mean,
and vice
Disney
versa.
doesn't own Celebration anymore because that's what they thought.
As the
would
arbiter
happen.
of Walt's principles,
did
Marty compiled a blue booklet that preserved Disney's core design philosophy.
Do a Back to the Future on
This Bible of sorts
Oh,
would guide
absolutely.
future
Yeah.
generations of Imagineers.
Yeah, and it'd have to go back to Epcot, the city, too, for sure. No, that'd be a fun
More
one.
than a dozen years ago, Walt Disney outlined his belief that the critical problems facing the world can and will
That's
be
the
solved
American
by
Adventure
creative
in the
people
middle there. That
who are both dreamers and
that thing
doers.
just past the.
He called his dream Epcot, experimental, prototype, community of tomorrow.
You could go underneath.
Walt's
it,
vision for a real utopian society was abandoned. Disney just couldn't control how people live their lives in their own homes. Instead, John and Marty
they do
kept
now.
Walt's
Yeah.
themes and morphed them
They
into
got
an
us.
interactive
Disney Plus.
exhibition.
Thank you.
World Showcase, an international expo, merged with Future World, an industry trade
The
show.
ones that they had on display at the 35th were
Free of
those
classic Disney
real
characters,
from-
the goal was to educate more than entertain.
Yeah, a couple actually. And Germany too.
Yeah,
Those were.
at this point they started saving stuff. I think.
Don Tatum said something
The archives
that
was
really
coming
interesting
about.
about what do we have to do with the future, with
that's a
influencing the world. Why are we taking it upon ourselves to tackle that problem? Well, we've gained all of this knowledge, and we've gained this group of people who think a special way, not just designers, but innovators and ecologists, environmentalists, scientists. Now we've got all these resources. It would be irresponsible not to do it.
Wed Enterprises embraced a sense of higher purpose and staffed up.
Very retro looking.
I took a cut and pay from Disneyland to come up here to WED, and I didn't know anybody. I didn't know a single soul up here. It terrified me, and it was a beehive
Universe
of activity.
Energy Neural.
People were running into each other. It was
Yeah, the
crazy.
tile.
It was something bold and exciting
It's so
and
crazy to
huge
see that hanging in
and
someone's
brand
cubicle.
new and not a
Can you
castle
imagine
park, but
Universe
something
Energy wasn't
entirely
even a thing?
different.
Didn't exist.
This is where the imagination was.
We're here at the WED switchboard. We're going to talk to Kim and ask her a few questions. Hi, Kim. Are you busy?
Yes, I'm
The switchboard.
Everybody
Kids,
really
look it
bounced
up.
around a lot. You weren't just assigned
Just
to
go
a
on Spaceship
project and
Earth.
you
You'll
stuck
see
to it.
Yeah.
The art directors spent most of their day down in the model shop. That's where we gleaned kind of all of our direction and also that tribal knowledge that we talk about from just sharing stories.
This is such a cool time.
And we were
This is the people that worked with Walt and then Walt started working with this
there
next
weren't any
group,
women
the next
in
generation,
executive
and it's
positions
such
when
a
I arrived
fun
at
group.
Imagineering. But
And that's
there
why
were
everything turned
young
out so
women
wonderful.
who were coming
It's
out
just
of
all the right
architecture
people
school. There were
at the right time.
young
And
women
these people
who
were
were
bestowed
lighting
with all the right
designers.
knowledge
There
from
were
this group,
project
like John and
managers,
Marty and all
engineers,
these
and
people.
we were all part
So why
of
did they
this
pass
sort
on
of
to the
new
next
generation of
I
people.
think they tried.
We were very lucky back then because it wasn't so specialized. We were very much jack of all
I guess
trades.
that's interesting.
We would
like
paint,
the group
we
that
would
coming
build,
along now
we learned how to
wanted
read
learn from
architectural
these people who
drawings.
do Walt,
We were allowed to
right? But then
explore
you
our
lose that
talents.
generation of connection to Walt, and the next generation.
I remember
it's like,
Harper
who are
Goff
you?
coming
I can
into
do
my
this
area
myself.
one time
I know.
and saying, I'd
It's
watch you
weird though
design a
because
space
this
for a
next
shop
group
in
turns
Epcot."
out
He said, Harper, I'm
to
one
be,
of the painters.
I think in many ways just as good.
Come on,
Yeah.
try it.
And next episode, we have Tony and that group.
I still to
and
this
those
day
guys.
say,
are
X, how did you
fantastic.
come up with a line
It's-
for Haunted Mansion?
I think it's episode 4 where we're going to get into like when
foreboding.
you start
How
to
did you
lose
write
some of
that?
that.
I don't think I could ever write that. I'd say you look nervous. So X was the one that sort of taught me how to write for rides.
But in fairness, it's probably not necessarily actual.
I marvel to this day about how Epcot was even designed.
Yeah, I mean,
and developed,
there's certain, I'm sure there's
because
many
we had
talented
no iPhones, we had no fax machines, we had no
Just stepping
emails, we
stones.
had none of that, no digital tools to help us design. It was just, how did we do that project? I don't know.
I really still feel concerned that we haven't finished the creative process. We have, I figure, about 9 months between now and next October. It's a tremendous amount of work. It's going to take a tremendous team effort.
9
We're
months
going to have
before
to
he's
get
basically
along with
like,
one another. I
right,
imagine there's
this
going
isn't
to
going
be
to
times
happen
we get
unless
pretty
we,
mad because
like,
somebody else
people
maybe
need to
not
buckle
doing what they
down.
should do. But I wish that we could communicate more. If there are problems that we can talk about and solve, because I think it's going to take that kind of a spirit to get this job done. It's not going to be easy.
At the time, the largest construction project in the world.
Everybody knew they could help each other.
Epcot Center.
You know, no one says, that's not your job, man, or that's not my job, man. We didn't allow that type of attitude.
See, that's
If someone was
the
having
attitude
trouble,
that
they
gets
didn't
things
hesitate
done.
to ask for help. When we were doing installations, I used to sit up a
Do
bar
what it takes to get it
in
done.
the hotel room or in the apartment, wherever it was. And then we'd all meet afterwards and we would go over the day. Primarily would be who needs help and where do you need
I think things
What
get
type
delayed
do you
now
need? And
because
we were
number one, because they
arranged to have
outsource things, but number two, I think because no one leaves like their
Future World featured
Their
the
area.
latest environmental engineering. The land
I love
pavilion
those stills.
enclosed the
She's
world's
on the
largest
land.
greenhouse. Scientists grew plants without soil, called hydroponics. Their energy pavilion stressed clean alternatives, and Disney practiced what it preached.
Within sight of the Magic Kingdom, the project involves a solar-heated and air-cooled office building for Disney's own utility company.
So this is all part of, they don't talk about it at all, but like Epcot Center is called Epcot Center because all of Walt Disney World was Epcot.
Solar energy. No other
So the
energy
idea
source
was Disney World was the experimental prototype community of
its
tomorrow.
own
So
self-sufficient
this is
power plant.
Epcot because even
In
though it's
addition
nowhere
to
near the
solar
park,
panels, 2 jet engines
Disney
burn
World
natural
was
gas.
doing solar
Excess heat was
facilities
captured
and
to
all
chill
these
water for
they
air
were they were
conditioning.
practicing
Roots of
all these
water
things that they
hyacinth
taught you at Epcot.
plant
They were trying to
absorb
apply property.
pollutants,
Why?
making them an effective
Because the
way
idea
to
was
filter
Epcot
sewage.
Center is the center
When I got
of
involved in
Epcot,
there
which
was a
is
sense
all of Walt
idealism and
Disney.
possibility there.
If that makes sense.
It was really
Danny K.
impressive.
Bates explains it in that
This was a
same
park that was about
the confusing
something.
way
It was
on the
about future.
opening
It was about
special.
energy and how we can live on this planet in a sustainable way.
So it's
One
like,
of the
we're going to
Tony
teach you all these
Baxter
things, but we're
coined
absolutely
this thing
also
about
going to
if the
implement them
Magic Kingdom is
property-wise.
fantasy made real. Epcot is reality made
So,
fantastic.
at any point, did they produce
These stories that we were
Did a lot
telling
of the
about
properties
real
move
stuff,
from
about
Epcot?
science and the
Yeah,
future,
I
and
mean, they
about
always
culture.
have from that
Well,
group.
I mean, like,
I don't know how much of
fantasy
property, but at the
stories.
very least, the restaurants in the land.
The symbol of Epcot, an 18-story geodesic sphere, took 26 months to build.
Never been done
Science
before.
fiction author Ray Bradbury wrote a time machine journey that traced how advancements in communication shaped mankind.
Now,
From the
storytelling.
invention of the alphabet to to the printing press, to the computer.
Don't worry, guys. You just have to follow Ray Bradbury.
Certainly we wanted Spaceship
No
Earth
pressure.
to be entertaining. But we
We'll just
wanted
put a
to
light
set
that like
tone
bounces
based
around the
on
ceiling and
fact
follow it.
and kind of
It'll
the
be
drama
fine.
of the world achievement. So you enter Spaceship Earth, you board a time vehicle, you go through the mists of time. The beginning narration said, who are we? Where have we come from?
The answers begin in our past. In the dust
I
from which we
love
were
that they
born.
have this audio. This
Answers
surprise.
recorded on the walls of time.
This is the
We wanted to
1982, so
convey
we're talking
that
before Walter
communications
I've
is
never
such a
heard that
powerful
source
tool.
audio.
Is it still debated who that is?
No, Marty said it was, where he said it's not Vic Perrin, it's Larry Dobkin. Is that what he said? I don't remember offhand. Look at that beautiful high-def mural. Whoever thought you'd be watching a show on television where that mural scrolls up the screen, that Spaceship Earth. It's
The
very
challenge
special
for Epcot
documentaries.
was, we know that people don't want to be lectured to, so we need to keep these stories entertaining and engaging, and we want to mix it up, so we don't want everything to have the same tone.
Card Walker proclaimed that we're going to use a lot more film. We have
This
a way
is,
to do
nobody
it now, so
really
that
talks
it's
about it, but
feasible.
they did so
We're not
many
breaking down, our prints
insane
last a long
things
time.
with film.
And he says we're going to not use 16 millimeter anymore. Wherever we
But
use
that was the
16,
thing,
we
like,
use 35.
We're not
Wherever
doing
we
new
use
projection
35,
stuff
we're
now,
gonna
but
use 70.
when there were
Had
screens
to build
and when
special cameras, all
you
kinds
know,
of
it was
special
done at Epcot,
projectors.
it was done
But
well,
a
and it was something you had not seen
monumental
before.
effort on
It
the
was
part of our studio and
Omnimax
machine shop.
and all of these
The
formats and
machine
things
shop
you were
was
not
kind of the
used to.
unsung heroes. It was like General Motors for production.
And now it's like in
systems.
place of
It's row after
storytelling,
row
isn't it?
after row of really
They're just
exotic
building
devices just coming off the assembly line.
Now that would
They
all
were
be
so
third party. They
complicated.
were,
And yet,
Disney was
like giant
building
Swiss watches.
projectors from scratch.
They actually had bidirectional data. These are very sophisticated things that predate normal electronic monitoring of equipment. It was very, very cutting edge.
Walt Disney was disappointed when he was unable to roll out Fantasia in the format he wanted to. You know, he had created the sideways projection so he could do a really special format for Fantasia. And I think at the time it was just too expensive for movie theaters to change their equipment for one film. But I think once he had Disneyland, he realized I can create custom theaters and custom cameras to do whatever I want.
Theater, right? Yeah, I mean,
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Cinerama.
In 1952, when Walt Disney saw the widescreen Cinerama projection system at the Hollywood Pantages Theater, it sparked an idea. He posed a technical challenge to his longtime collaborator and co-creator of Mickey Mouse, of iWorks. If they can put 3 screens together, why can't we do a full circle? Of answered with a new invention.
and now iWorks just like, yep, here you go.
My dad's joy was solving problems, number one, for Walt. He designed the circular rig, a round, big round plate with 11 16 millimeter cameras on it, like spokes in a wheel.
Just insane.
The cameras were all interlocked together with a chain drive inside the base, so they would all run in synchronization.
And like he
The thing
says
that
in
always
this, like
worried
if
about is
one,
what if you lost a loop, or
if
you had
one
film jam
camera
on
went out, you
camera,
lost
then
the
it
whole
isn't-
thing.
You didn't lose just the one, you lost
think
all
about how
11.
many problems we have with a camera every week. I mean,
In the early days, Walt walked through and he folded his arms as he would, and he said, well, he says, you know, it's pretty good. And I think to myself, it's pretty good. It's
pretty good.
He says,
Walt
someday,
was
though,
see?
there'll be
Didn't
technology
even not even
where
really
it'll be
thank you. He's like,
screening
that's
all
pretty
the way
good.
around it and all
You
over
just
the
created
ceiling, and you'll be
circular
immersed in it,
film.
and there won't be
Pretty
any
good, I
screen.
guess.
Well,
Dick Nunes is like, oh my god! Dick Nunes is like spinning around in the theater, falls over. Walt's like, this is good.
And reduce the number of frame breaks.
This is okay. People like it.
The experience virtually transported the viewer into another photo reality.
What's next? All right, now I want the whole room.
America the Beautiful, of course, is the one that most people remember from Disneyland. But when Epcot opened, there were 2 full circle vision, China and Canada. and a 5
one thing
Circle
with the
Vision
Epcot
for France.
overhaul
And
that I
still
don't think
running
anyone
today.
could say anything bad about is Seamless Circle Vision. I think the fact that they're going to keep Circle Vision and China's going to go to a new Seamless film the first time ever, I think that's a really cool thing.
Everything.
I'm
for
upset that
Epcot was
Canada's just
new,
getting a film
technology
change.
was featured,
They kind of, I
and
think they both should.
we had just heard about this new thing coming out called digital audio. Prior to
Disney and
that,
their
everything was done on film, on
attempts to
35
press
millimeter
the
mag,
Chinese
quarter-inch tape, and the quality loss was apparent. But we bought
That's
4
supposedly
32-track
co-developed
digital
for
tape
China.
machines, and overnight became the largest digital facility in the whole world.
Isn't that
The folks who brought
fascinating?
you Mickey Mouse and Disneyland
Largest
are about to
digital
bring you
facility in the
Epcot.
world.
It is not what Walt Disney had in mind back in 1966.
That park, yeah.
He envisioned a futuristic
But that's what it's supposed to
community,
be.
a real
Like,
town.
that's what
This
World's
is
Fairs
something
were.
else.
So
It's a
that's what
Disneyland
they
for
were trying to
adults,
do,
a
was
sort
create a
of permanent
permanent
World's Fair.
World's
This
Fair.
is being called the
instead of
biggest
as I'm saying.
entertainment gamble of all time. Epcot Center
So we're trying to
represents
do-
the
look at that empty
culmination
plot
of
for
more than
ICs.
25 million hours of effort by talented artists, designers, engineers,
great
and
publicity
technicians, all propelled
The
by
fountain's
the
gonna be
power and
back,
force
it's
of an idea
We'll
of
have
one
something,
wonderful
right?
man,
We don't just sit
Walt
at the
Disney.
fountain. We don't have to go back. Just gonna sit at that fountain and pretend the rest is still there.
The first thing we're going to take a look at today is a robot. Tell me about the robot.
There was an interactive robot. It was one of the first things to use voice recognition and voice synthesis.
Hi, cutie. What's your name?
Mark 1. What's yours?
Touchscreen technology, which the general public had not seen.
Touchscreen.
Because those
Brand
things were
new.
successful, people would say,
The park was
let's
full
do that
of
with computers.
One of the things that Communicore is trying to do is get people up close so they can, as you say, touch the future. People are really dealing with computers, but we've taken away the threat of a computer by just having you touch the screen. And whatever we can do to create that interactive experience, we've gone ahead with it.
When will they become part of life, like the touch screen?
What we hope is that based on the kinds of things that we do here, that they will develop into commercial applications so people can have these kinds of things at home. As soon as they can have these at home, we have to do something beyond that.
The public
Image
discovered
Works was,
fiber
I
optics,
couldn't believe
lasers,
anything
and
in Image
leapfrog
Works. It was all
fountains.
insane.
An
All just
interactive lab
mesmerizing.
encouraged guests to explore their senses and to think differently. But the greatest tool on display was what Imagineers exercise daily. Symbolized by a purple dragon named Figment, the mascot of Epcot taught guests the power of imagination.
What does this one do? Oh.
I would spend hours with the machine. I would just stand there for that and stepping stones just for hours.
After that,
I didn't like
a lot
School of
excitement
Drama.
in the company about interactive
But
experiences.
stepping tones and
But
painting.
Walt was always interested in education too, and this is kind of a part of his legacy that doesn't often get talked about. But he was fascinated with everything. He didn't draw a line between education and entertainment. He just wanted people engaged in what was going on. And so those of us who came from the education side, we were really on a mission to prove that we could do this. Epcot Center is
You can
where
tell it's a current
big
shot
thoughts
because everything's
happen,
dirty.
where people learn about innovation and people learn about the innovation inside of
Yeah,
it.
that's why.
And people are empowered, and the messaging
I don't expect anyone to go up there.
about much of the vision that drove Walt, and hopefully over time that more and more becomes a place that where people go to learn, go to actually
This is so sad.
contribute and to take that back to communities all around the world.
It's like this was filmed
Where
before they
else
knew
could
what was
someone
gonna happen.
travel around the world in a day without the hassle of plane
That's what Epcot
delays,
should be.
lost
It's
luggage,
sad
or jet lag?
that it's lost.
Whether teleporting
In
between
episode 3,
pyramids
they bring up
and
this part
pagodas,
about Michael
or
Eisner
eating
believed
strudel and shish
each
kebab,
park had to have
the
its own
overall
unique
effect
identity.
broadened the mind.
Now
It was a small
they're
world
slowly
after all.
losing that. They don't feel as unique.
Well, I don't know how you ever explain Walt, you know. He must have seen into the future because he made steps for it. This is the extraordinary thing. If you look backwards, the things he did were all perfectly logical, though they seemed very radical at the time he did them.
Almost all the company was working on Epcot
and was absorbed by Epcot at the time, and a very small group of us got to work on the first international park. And Tokyo, by comparison, was a bit of an afterthought.
He's a great stepchild.
Yeah, sure.
Did not want to do any projects other than
when that stepchild hit puberty, it ended up being the prettiest one in the whole family. Meanwhile, the rest of them are unemployed.
What do I do with the Japanese? They keep wanting us to do a project, and they keep bothering me. I keep telling them we're not going to do it. They keep calling every week.
The late bloomer.
I said, tell them they're going to pay all the costs.
It's amazing that they didn't want to do Tokyo. They tried so hard to not do it, and Tokyo was just like, whatever you want, okay, deal.
They just knew they wanted it that bad. They knew.
They
said they called every week. He knew it. This man was a genius. He knew it. Yeah, he knew, and he was right. They were so hungry for
company known as OLC hired WED Enterprises. The deal provided the Imagineers a chance to test whether their designs would even work outside of the comfort zone of America.
All the risk was the Frontierland company.
Is purely a brand risk. OLC's risk is a
I love that he has a Duffy in the background.
OLC owns and operates.
I know what they
love. On our side, we
I'm sure it's a different department sometimes develop special fun name tags.
And
the Avengers team has all
teach
like Avengers names. The Epcot people have the Spaceship Earth name tag. So it's not uncommon.
We had to learn how to deal with a partner. We had to learn to deal with a partner that was not proficient in our language, so that created a whole bunch of other issues. We were in a foreign country and had to learn about cultures and business operations and so forth. I was not so much a business executive, I had become a diplomat.
Masamoto Takahashi, the president of OLC, demanded there be no compromise on quality. Despite the rising cost, he insisted on defining the service industry in Japan.
Of course, the Disney World ambassador
not
and
the
the
facility,
Disneyland ambassador
would be the key to touching people's hearts.
Yeah.
Takahashi-san, he was the Walt Disney of Tokyo Disneyland. First of all, I think he saw through entertainment you could have a better understanding among people. And boy, was he right. Takahashi-san was really a dreamer. And he allowed us to bring 9 of his top executives to Disneyland for 1 year.
They were a
And we had the buddy system where we'd put one of our top operating people with them.
The idea was when you would build train routes, you wanted to have
they spent a
some
year
big attraction at the end of the line, like Coney Island in New York. And so when they were thinking about this, it was reclaimed land.
Cast
They were
members
building
studied
on.
courtesy
They
and
wanted to
efficiency.
put something there, and so when they were coming up with amusement park, somebody just was like, if we're going to do this, we should do the best. Who is the best? Disney is the best. Why don't we try to get Disney to come to a park? And that was the whole idea, as I understand it, was something to put at the end of the train.
And move to Japan and work on this very challenging project with a small group of people. I just fell in love with that idea. We had a joke about business trips. 2 weeks would get you 3 weeks, and 3 weeks would get you relocated. Because once you got over there, that little small team in Tokyo would say, wow, we really need this person. Can you just stay? Even in frustrating times of construction and hard work, Tokyo was a family.
Lying 10 kilometers from the center of metropolitan Tokyo, Tokyo Disneyland is located in Chiba Prefecture, in the town of Urayasu, providing for the leisure time needs of over 30 million people.
The Japanese have a very high affinity for Disney. This kind of goes back to after the war,
And if you don't
when
understand
the U.S. occupied Japan for a while, there was censorship in the media. Some of the earliest films that were allowed to be shown to the Japanese were Disney films. Snow White, Cinderella, Bambi.
But it's also so much of who they are. They've always loved
that
animation.
the Japanese, what they really wanted,
It was
they
a natural
want
fit. It was a
Disneyland.
thing. It was easy for
They
them.
want the authentic,
Even though it was forced upon them
Western art
culturally, it was a thing that
that
was.
you could find in
California.
they could fall in love with regardless.
What we did was basically a cookie cutter of Disneyland. A lot of the same projects. All we had to do was take the plans out of storage and convert it to the metric system.
At Tokyo Disneyland?
We were able to salvage a lot of Walt Disney World drawings.
They had
and adjust
an attraction about
that saved some time for Tokyo Disneyland.
but otherwise it was.
We had no
the story is they basically wanted Disneyland. Right. They just wanted the real thing, so it was like recreate this. And supposedly, what people think happened is the executives went to Disneyland, Disney World, and just pointed. They just pointed at things, and so that's why it's this weird combination. But they're perfect copies.
Which, as a
all
student,
of those
it was
older
tough
things
because
were
I was
just
learning
like
very, very quickly
absolute
myself, but this was-
recreations, and it's weird because it's like Disneyland and Disney World just got smashed together. It's the weirdest thing.
That's why you talk about going over there's like a time machine.
It is because all that stuff then stayed. A lot of it stayed untouched. It is still the 1971 Florida haunted mansion. It's still just big areas of solid colored pavement. Like some of it, so much of it is like going back in time.
This part's really cool, where they actually are now documenting all their
Tokyo Disneyland marketed itself as a 100% copy of the Magic Kingdom, but lost in translation was Main Street, USA.
This was
Instead,
the
the
one thing they
World
did very
Bazaar
differently.
satisfied the Japanese zeal for buying souvenirs. A glass-covered roof shielded guests from bad weather and the outside world. It represented an extension of the classic tunnel entrance, their gateway to playtime.
Tokyo Disneyland fills a need that they are missing in their daily lives. It is perfectly acceptable to dance
It's
on the
different. It's
street,
its own thing.
to sing,
It's not my favorite Main Street by
and to
far.
smile.
But I love it because
to
the
express
merchandise in the
themselves
stores is so good.
in a society
Yeah.
where they do not have that freedom.
They're not particularly detailed stores. It's fine. It's
They
not
are
a great
emotionally
Main
connected
Street,
to
but
what we're doing.
it has its
and they are
moments,
living
like the projection
the
shows.
happiness
The
that we are
35th
trying
had
to
the big
produce.
party popper thing in the middle, which was really cool. So it works for things. I don't know if without those things it really works. It's not
The
a way to
emotional
go to that part.
feel that we had
The
was
waving.
basic to
You
begin
go
with.
to wave.
Things
Because
that
you don't
adults
wave in
could
everyday
enjoy
life.
without
It's my
feeling
favorite
embarrassed.
thing to do is just stop and wave at things. So if the boat goes by, you saw those people on Tom Sawyer Island, we'll just stop and start waving. The whole boat starts waving back at you. It's such a weird, fun thing to do. Like a train goes by, you just start waving at it because the whole train will wave back at you. It's just fun. It's just wholesome and magical, and they love it so much. I love how much they love it.
Was a perfect fit for us. It turned out.
It's a whole park of people who feel how we feel, and they have a reason to feel it because everything there is perfect.
It's more because
Walt
of
would
their
say,
everyday
a
culture.
good song is good in any language in the world.
It is a release,
I think
but
he'd be
they
very proud
they
of
do
Japan.
love it.
Walt's probably
Like
up there
they
singing, "Now,
go
Heaven, what took you so
more
long?"
than we do.
That was Walt.
And we write about these places. They go
More
for
than 10
fun
million
6
people
days a
passed
week.
through the
That's
front
just who
gate
they
opening
are.
year. The success of Tokyo Disneyland made international expansion look easy. The Imagineers had faced two massive projects, both opening within 6 months of each other, and prevailed.
Look at that cake. That is a cake. Even the cake was amazing. Now they just project the cake.
It's just a white
You're
sheet
kind of
with
looking at
projection
the
on it.
projects are coming to a close, and you're thinking, wow, these guys don't have any clue what we're going to do the month after these things open. And it was weird at the time because I was pretty young.
Guard Walker, Dante Adam, and Ron Miller,
In fact, in hindsight, there wasn't a
What
plan.
are we going to
I
do?
think it speaks to just how overwhelming Epcot was. And then Tokyo on top of Epcot.
Card Walker suddenly announced
Yeah.
his retirement. He had groomed Walt Disney's son-in-law, a former
That'll work.
basketball player, into the next.
Things will be fine.
Ron Miller vowed to strengthen the floundering.
Ron Miller, in fairness,
The
really
Disney
worked
Channel
hard to
soon
try and
debuted on
fix the
cable
studio.
TV.
And Ron started the discussions
the
with
theme
Lucas, so
parks,
he doesn't get enough
development
credit
stopped.
for trying to get the ball rolling. But at the same time, these
We
things
went from
are
like 3,000 people to, I don't know, 400
But
people.
everyone
There
had
was
to
huge
know.
layoffs. It was kind of a dark time.
Things were going
The
to
Disney
slow
board of
down after
directors
those
took a
projects.
look
You-
at
A lot of people had to know they were not going to still have
this company doesn't make any money. They just spend money.
It's just the nature sometimes of the business.
I never understood why we'd lay off like 100 to 125 people, and we'd do it the week before Christmas. I think it happened 3 times in a row, and we always hated Christmas time because we'd look around and says, okay, who's going to get tossed out this time? I was finally told, well, pick out the 20 best people at Imagineering and send them to the studio, and that will control it from the studio.
He didn't retire.
And I argue that can't be done.
No, and Marty.
Projects this organization does.
Marty got rid of him.
With 20
I think.
people
I believe that's what happened, and then Bob went and did stuff for Universal and all sorts of other places.
And so
Bob
I
designed the King Kong
drug my feet
confrontation
and
the studio
asked
tram.
the vice presidents to drag their feet on any more cuts.
All sorts of cool things.
Wow.
In 1983, 80% of the company's revenues were coming from the theme park, and only 20% from all the other businesses.
Asset-rich and debt-free, Disney stock appeared grossly undervalued. Corporate raider Saul Steinberg bought a 10% stake in the company and threatened a hostile takeover.
It's amazing to think that Disney almost
It took its
like,
toll.
took over by
It would have been a terrible thing for Steinberg to take over the company, because what they would have done, they would have divided the company, and separated and sold it off in pieces.
Disney paid off Saul Steinberg in what's known as a green mail scheme. He made a $30 million profit to simply walk away. A shareholder mutiny rose up to oust senior management. The fate of the theme parks and Wet Enterprises would be determined by the next CEO.
No, it needed to remain one
The special effects department had
Now
been
it's kind of a problem because
dramatically,
the
and we
whole
ended up
like
part
we
of
need
the
to
model
leverage
shop.
IPs thing.
Things were very slow. There was a lot of concern
But there's
in there
strength in
about
that
our
too.
survivability.
I mean, obviously they
as,
should.
actually as a
There
company.
should be a balance of original creative ideas and also
what was going to happen to
leveraging
Imagineering,
IPs,
what was
like
going to
coming up
happen to
with
the
great things to
company.
do with
In general, a lot of rumors out there. They're very
franchises
scared
people love. But there's a balance to be
I was having
made.
a lot of meetings at the studio. My demeanor was
But the
conveying
problem
that we were under a lot of
the last 20 years
stress.
is going.
Known
You go to two
cutbacks that
different
we had made.
extremes.
New work wasn't coming
There's
in.
never a proper balance.
I think there was a sense that this place might be closed down.
Yeah, like in the next episode, they kind of go into that sort of balance.
Well, that's episode 2.
Sure was.
We're wrapping up our watch along. We'll have a review started next. We'll talk how we felt about episode 2. But yeah. Or you could just try to play the next episode automatically. I'm gonna make sure it doesn't. Yeah, episode 2. All right, let me do an introduction, and we'll because we're recording these also to be edited and put in a neat format on YouTube. So excuse us, those of you who are tuning in live.
And happy Friday evening to everyone.
Happy Friday! I can't tell how late it is. The ladder's blocked.
Does everything come out on Fridays? I know
Yeah.
Mandalorian and WD. Okay.
No, but weirdly enough, one day at Disney is premiering. I think a Tuesday or Wednesday, whatever the 3rd is.
Oh, okay.
That's like the one thing that's not a because we just got the schedule for the next like 3 weeks.
Cool.
Everything else is still on Fridays, and then December 1st there's a bunch of series coming on, not originals, but some other, some mostly Disney Junior stuff coming on. But,
Gotcha.
So let's dive into our review. I'll start us off. I can put the remote down. All right, welcome to the Plus Party review of episode 2 of the Imagineering story documentary series on Disney Plus, titled "What Would Walt Do?" We just finished our watch along of the episode, and so what do we think of episode 2? Episode 2, of course, about life after Walt Disney, and finishing projects at Disneyland like New Tomorrowland and Haunted Mansion, progressing through creating Walt Disney World and Epcot Center. Tokyo Disneyland. That's what this episode covers. What did everybody think?
So the part that fascinated me was the Tokyo Disneyland, because
Is that all new stuff to you?
It's mostly new stuff to me. Yeah.
I assume you've heard most of the Epcot stuff.
Right. So, there wasn't too much in there that was new to me, but seeing the behind the scenes of Epcot was really fascinating. I mean, some of the footage I saw.
Like we said last week, even though we know certain things,
right?
The imagery is so good that you don't mind.
Yeah, and I like seeing like the blueprints and things like that. And then the building of Disney World is, I always love seeing that footage of nothing there.
Yeah.
Around that, where Magic Kingdom was built up from. But really the Tokyo Disney stuff, learning more about the Oriental Land Company and how bad they wanted the Disney park to be built there. I mean, that's fascinating, and that's so cool. It's amazing how desperate they were, and it's interesting that Disney had no, or at least the leadership at Disney had no interest in doing it. They
were in the middle of Epcot, which was the largest construction project in the world at that moment. So taking on another project.
But they didn't have to do anything. They just said.
But they didn't know that going in, because he said in the documentary they were like, well, just give them. They sat in their room and they're like, let's just give them an unreasonable set of demands.
Yeah.
And they gave them the unreasonable set of demands, and the Japanese went, okay. And they were like, oh, what did we just get ourselves into? All right.
Yeah.
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 I really enjoyed. I always enjoy everything about Walt. So I really enjoyed just I guess, how lost everyone was after Walt, and then especially after Roy, when Walt Disney World was, finished, and he died 3 months later. Like, it was this time and this just convoluted, time of people not knowing what to do next, and what would have been if they would have just given up at that point in time.
Yeah.
And it's kind of just weird to think of, these two people were such an integral part of everything, and after that, and Walt has always, I think it was in the last episode, there was a small little clip of him saying, hopefully it goes on past, Disney.
Yeah.
And it's great to see that it did.
Yeah.
And yeah.
And in a big way, I mean, obviously, I think as Walt Disney World fans, I think all of us pine over our Epcot Center of years past. And I think not only did they continue, they went onward and upward. They just kept getting better until Epcot, I think, was just this culmination of everything that John Hench and that group had learned. And you just saw all these years of experience in this magnum opus for all of them. And it's, like Nick said during the watch along, like, it's amazing. New film technology, new audio. They became the largest digital audio producer in the world. That's insane, just because they had to do it for theme parks. I mean, it's. I mean, obviously, if you're watching this, you probably know all sorts of things about the development of Epcot. It is fascinating. I mean, you could do a whole documentary series just on Epcot that could be 6 episodes or more. So
the fun thing is, I honestly did not know all that about that, and it was interesting to see, because I don't remember that Epcot, even though I did go like in the early 90s. I just don't remember anything that was there or anything like that. So the Epcot that I do remember is like the 2000s Epcot.
Yeah.
Which
when we were done with it.
Exactly.
That's Epcot.
That's the Epcot that I know, and it's kind of weird to see like all this, and like my roommate is like a really big old Epcot fan, and she talks about it all the time, and sometimes I just don't understand pretty much like what it's about, but it's interesting to see all the, like we said, all the firsts that happened for Epcot.
Right.
That's what I think is great about this series is I think for people who don't know, it's a good introduction, and I think it helps you to understand why, like, maybe those people in that 28 to 40 age group are why we're so insane about Epcot Center. I think you start to get that idea watching the show, like, oh, it was this special thing. Like, it wasn't just this educational theme park. Like, you went and saw things you had never seen in your life. Like, the touch screen was introduced to most people in the world at Epcot Center. Yeah. Like, the Walt Disney Company introduced so many people in the world to technology that is now such a big part of our everyday life. And it wasn't just the touchscreen. You were talking about so many things. Yeah. Those projection technologies and all of those things. Yeah.
And I think it's hard to replicate that, though. There's some good stuff at Epcot still today. There really is. I mean, there's some. Okay, look.
Okay, look.
I agree.
No, I mean, Frozen. It's a good ride, good attraction.
But you know, I wrote a positive review of Frozen Ever After.
Right.
Because I think it's a very cute ride. But when I watch this episode, I'm reminded of why Epcot is special and why Frozen doesn't belong at Epcot.
Right.
And I was one of those people that's like, it's time to move on and blah, blah, blah. But then I'm also the same person who watches that and I remember like, no, we had something really special.
Right.
And I don't want to move on.
Well, here's the end
You
of that
can build
thought.
your Frozen ride in another park.
Yes. Okay.
You leave our Epcot alone.
I think it's hard to recapture that, though. It kind of goes back
Well,
to...
it's hard to recapture because you are unwilling to take risks. I think in the last 20 years, you get to that point where you're unwilling to take those risks.
There was so much at that early Epcot that was new and exciting to a generation of people. Yeah. And now you don't have that. You don't have that technology that's really groundbreaking to anyone there. And that's the big difference. Yeah. You have nothing. You lost that wow factor. And I don't know how you bring that back.
No, because you just like gave up on it. And even like in redoing Epcot, like if you compare like Journey into Imagination, the original ride, had all these like, there was a giant turntable full of animatronics that followed your ride vehicle. And it was like the first use of lasers to do those kind of things. Right. And all of those things. And then you look at Journey into Your Imagination, and it's a table where it kind of looks like there's glass top and a brick just falls through the middle. And you're like, well, what did you learn on this ride? Well, nothing. I learned I had no imagination until I went on this garbage ride, and then suddenly my head's filled with ideas. So, like, at some point in time, they just, like, gave up on trying to be cutting edge and inspirational. And
do you think if they would have just, how should I say this? If they would have just, because like you said, there isn't, I guess, like, new things coming out. It's just very much this, here's a new version, here's a new version of that, here's a new version of that. If they would have just done that.
Blow it out and we put a roller coaster. Or we put a rat projection ride.
It's like, like I don't know. I don't know how exciting it is to just see newer versions of something that at one point was amazing because it was the first of its kind.
And it's sad because the couple times they tried to do it, like there were certainly attempts to recapture that magic with modern ideas and technology. Mission Space comes to mind. Mission Space is very much an Epcot attraction. Is it my favorite? No. But is it an Epcot attraction? Absolutely. It has an edutainment aspect. It was a thing you had never seen before. You had never been able to ride on something so true to the experience of going into space. It's basically a real training thing that astronauts use. That's the spirit of Epcot, absolutely.
I like it a lot.
Yeah, I understand. It's not for everybody. It just, unfortunately, it wasn't a hit.
Right.
But it certainly captured the spirit of Epcot. But we're getting way off topic. We're trying to review the episode. I know when we talk about Epcot, we're always going to go down this road. But
my other observation was, although I know the story, seeing how the technology was so advanced at that time, being reminded about that is pretty fascinating in this episode. So, I think that's part of the value of this episode. And then speaking to Eric's point, and kind of what you said, it's a good starting point, and then there's a lot of places you could jump off to learn more. There's a lot of books, a lot of things on
That's what this is. I think this is a tremendous introduction for people. And I think it's great for people who don't want to go any farther, which I watch plenty of similar documentaries on other topics, and there are things that, like, I'm not a fan of at the level I am of this, obviously. And so I think for Joe Idaho, like some random guy or woman, they're going to watch this and it's going to be fascinating, but that's going to be it for them, but that's fine. It's a fascinating documentary series for them. And for us, there's enough of interest for it to keep us excited to watch every week. I think what's interesting for me is the show comes about at a really interesting time, because I think things are not great, at least in our opinions. Things are not as good as they've ever, or the best they've ever been. And so it's an infuriating time to watch some of these. So watch at Epcot Park, at the same time, there's a lot of emotions happening. There is this amazement and awe. There is this nostalgia. There is this sadness for what's gone. And then at one point, that gentleman makes has that quote about Epcot will continue to be a place where the world can learn about new things. And you just think about him saying that and watching Disney build models of here's Marvel characters yelling at you about energy, and here's a ride where you somehow have shrunk into the size of a rat and are in a kitchen. And it's just, well, no, it didn't happen. It's kind of sad and infuriating at times, this show, because of where we are with some stuff currently.
Which is funny that this is the history of it. And it's like you don't even look back to your own history, to find things.
And I'm already mad because we get a press release every couple of weeks for what's coming up and little synopses of upcoming shows, and so we read the synopses of the next through the end.
Oh, okay.
And then it gets to the Bob Iger episode 5, and it's Bob Iger restores Walt Disney Imagineering to glory or whatever, and I'm oh boy. And in the final episode of Shanghai, and I'm oh man, it's I don't know. But we'll see. I hope they've been brutally honest thus far, but I think it's, like we said in the first week, it's easy to be brutally honest when none of those people are in management positions anymore. And we'll see what happens at episode 5 and 6 when we're talking about management that's currently there and people who are currently there, and how honest we're going to be about the job that's been done and that's being done.
That's so true.
The other value of this episode is going inside the utilidors. Really seeing the actual workings of the utilidors, the vacuums, the garbage vacuums, the
HVAC.
Yeah, all the displays that are down there. Yeah. There's cases with memorabilia. I guess, right?
Yeah.
Is that park memorabilia?
Yeah, a lot of it. Yeah. I remember from my trip down there, the thing I thought was the coolest was they had every series of the cast lanyard pins, the hidden Mickey pins, all on a board. I thought that was fun.
That's cool.
I don't know, just.
I gotta do that Keys to the Kingdom tour some year.
Yeah.
I haven't done that.
I would do that. I've never done Keys. We did Backstage Magic.
Oh, okay.
We should do that sometime.
Yeah. All right. Cool.
All right. Well, that's episode 2 of the Imagineering story. What Would Walt Do? Which, of course, is streaming now on Disney Plus. It was another great episode.
Yeah.
And look forward to more. Okay, for those of you watching live, that was our review of episode 2.
Go get some water.
Go ahead. Yeah, this would be a good time. Probably there'll be another can of soda. In a few moments, we're going to give everybody a few minutes to recoup. And then we're going to do our watch-along of the episode that was released today, which is... the fire stick here. I don't know what happened.
It's the Midas touch.
It went to a screensaver. Episode 3 is the Midas Touch, which is Michael Eisner and Frank Wells arriving, and will take us through some very interesting stuff. I assume most people haven't seen this yet because it came out today. So if you want to start getting ready to watch along with us, you want to fire up the episode, get ready, because in a couple of minutes we're going to do the watch along for episode 3 of the Imagineering story on Disney Plus, which was released again today, new for today. And we're going to try and work in, on Friday we begin our 50-hour live program to benefit Toys for Tots. It starts on Friday. I think at 11 o'clock tonight, it's not 11 o'clock yet. No. 11 o'clock tonight, the Post is going to go out with most of the schedule. Unfortunately, after I wrote the schedule, they announced that the next episode will be Friday. So we're going to try to fit that in somewhere in the schedule. I don't know where, but somewhere in the 50-hour show we'll watch episode 4 of Imagineering Story. So yeah.
Now the Midas Touch is, I guess, the part of history, like Disney history, that I know more of.
Yeah.
I know more of like this time because it was like right before me. Right before me, and I lived through it, so I enjoyed this a lot.
This was really interesting because I just got back from Paris 2 days ago, and the episode is mostly about Paris, so I just felt the timing was really right. And our backdrop is actually really, really well themed. We have, I don't know where it cuts off, but we have these great prints of railroad tickets and railroad posters from Disneyland Paris, and then there's a Phantom Manor billboard over there, and I also have my Disneyland Hotel mug from Paris.
Put on my jacket.
There's 2 more railroads up
Are you going to put on your Star Tours, Jack?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there's a ticket and a poster for every station.
The ones up top you guys can't see, but it's Fantasyland, and then just the Disneyland Railroad.
You just look like an old man, like it's cold in this office. Very cold. Okay.
It's very 80s too, I feel.
It is super 80s.
Yeah, I like it.
I used to have jackets like this.
Back in my day. Anyway. Are we ready to begin? Well, let me know when you're clipped in. We'll formally begin the show. You okay?
Yeah, I was going to flip it to the other side.
All right.
That's fine.
Are we ready?
Yeah.
Okay. The Plus Party is rolling on into episode 3 of the Imagineering story on Disney Plus. This episode titled The Midas Touch, and this is going to be our watch-along of that entire episode. So what we're going to do is, as a group, we're going to watch the show. We're going to basically do a commentary. You could choose to watch along. I'll do a countdown, and you can watch the episode along with us. Or you could just listen to this as a kind of a commentary track or just a podcast, whatever you'd like to do. The choice is yours and yours alone. I'm Tom Corliss, Nicholas Cicero here, Eric Wolf over there.
Or you could put us on mute and just watch us on mute on one screen,
and then
the show.
The Imagineering story could be the commentary on us.
Oh, whoa.
This is a revolutionary idea. Okay, so the way it's going to work is I'm going to count to 3, and when I say 3, we're going to begin this episode, The Midas Touch of the Imagineering story, picking up after the opening of Tokyo Disneyland and Ron Miller taking the reins of the Walt Disney.
And almost a hostile takeover.
Yeah, so things are changing, and now it's time for the arrival of Michael Eisner and Frank Wells. So, here we go. 1, 2, 3. The cartoon begin. It's a reference for some of you.
Does anybody else think of the switch click when that happens?
It sounds like, yeah.
The most important thing, I think, that we can invest in a project is the emotional relevance to the audience.
I know a lot of people are excited. A lot of people said this, the Tony Baxter episode.
The relevance
I love Tony.
people.
Tony's
all of this needs to
one of my
first.
favorite interviews
and then you
ever
can
done. I
ladle
forget which
on
expo it was, 2015.
layer upon layers of detail on the right thing.
Got to interview Tony in
It's
front
really
of like the
easy
Star
to
Tours
start
display.
putting the detail in when you haven't focused.
And I
You don't
immediately
know where
opened with
detail
him
belongs
talking
and where it should
about
be eliminated, so you come up with something that is
crumbling
scattered all over
ceiling
the
effect
place.
that got cut from Indiana
If it's
Jones.
not
opened
emotionally
with it,
rich
but they
and
couldn't
filled
maintain
with
it.
heart
And
and
he lit
feeling,
up like
it's not
you
gonna
could tell
work.
he like kind of didn't want to do press interviews. But then I opened with this thing that he like was very personal to him, and immediately I saw him like come back to life because he got to talk about this weird obscure roof thing, and from there the interview was just so much fun. Like I said before, great that the opening changes. Tower of Terror, beautiful castle in Paris.
There's been a
a management shakeup in the Magic Kingdom of Disney. The first time outsiders had been brought in at the top. The Disney Board of Directors chose Michael Eisner of Paramount Pictures as chairman and Frank Wells of Warner Brothers as chief operating officer.
On September 22nd, 1984, after 7 months of corporate turmoil and a hostile takeover attempt, the new executive leadership was installed. Michael and Frank met with theme park personnel and attempted to calm their nerves.
Looking at all those 1984
Thank you very
Magic
much.
Kingdom costumes.
Last time I was here, I waited an hour for Space Mountain. It's a tremendous pleasure to be here. Since I have come to this organization a week ago, I want to say that the selection of Frank and myself to work with you in this company,
Disney
we
World was
think,
the focal
is an indication that the board of directors have decided that this company will be led from a creative point of view.
But I think he was kind of on tour. I think they stopped like at every.
If there's anything that Michael and I stand for, it is to keep this company the way Walt Disney laid it down decades ago. We pledge that to you. We are thrilled to be here and to welcome ourselves with you as part of the Walt Disney family. Thank you very, very much.
Yeah, Frank didn't like public speaking.
Michael and Frank inherited a company struggling with stagnant film production.
Michael was.
A disgruntled animation department and another hostile takeover attempt. Once they restored peace to the Magic Kingdom, Michael and Frank vowed to hire A-list celebrity talent and turn Disney into the most powerful film studio in Hollywood.
People talk about Walt.
But what they thought of Wed Enterprise remained anyone's
absolutely.
guess.
They didn't know the first thing about Imagineering. They didn't know any of us at all. We weren't movie people and working on films. We were park people, if you will. And they had no experience with the parks.
When I arrived, Disney was under siege. What happens when you're under siege is you shrink down. So the Imagineers were shrunk down, were pushed to the back of the bus. Unfortunately, they were so out of sight, out of mind, that when we were driven there, our driver, who was a senior member of the Disney organization, got lost.
They couldn't
That's how
find him.
frequently people visited the Imagineers.
We thought any day the hammer was going to drop on Disney and Imagineering specifically because of the economic environment. And one day we were all summoned out to the patio here at 1401, and we thought, okay, this is it. They walked out and introduced themselves with the big booming voices and made a comment that they had felt that Imagineering was really the crown jewel. We're like, talking about us, you know, we thought we were about to get, you know, get the axe.
This guy. Yeah, so
They
crazy.
just gave a sigh of relief, called the vice presidents
It's like she's
together, and they said,
photobombing him.
we're alive. They're not going to close us down.
Something good comes out of something bad. And the fact that we were almost destroyed as a company united our company even stronger than I think it was before.
You couldn't walk through theme parks and not recognize that they lacked contemporary development. But when Frank and I walked down Main Street the first time, Frank turned to me and
They
said,
just got
"There's so much
it.
here."
It was very much like a Tom
There's so
Stagg
much we can
situation.
do.
They didn't come
You
from
couldn't
that
walk through the theme
background,
parks and not
but they
know
just
the
understood.
Everybody
what they could
before I
do.
got there would say, "What would Walt do? What would Walt think?" His picture was like pinned to the wall everywhere.
Well, it felt
He
like
can't be replaced.
he
So I'm just going to have to do
had the
what my
resources
instincts tell me
monetarily,
to do.
and I feel like Eisner treated this almost like his little playground. Like he could.
Michael
he
came
loved
in
it.
and he announced very confidently, I know so little about this business.
I
But
think
brought
both
my
of them
son,
did,
Brett,
in different ways.
who
I
loves
think
going
they
to
both
amusement parks to give
I love
feedback
the
on
infamous
what he thinks will
story
be good
of bringing
about what
his
we
son.
see today. And my mind is going, great, my career depends on a 14-year-old. But then I realized I've always thought of myself as a 12-year-old. By 6th grade, I was kind of the pipsqueak, the last guy picked for the baseball team and whatnot. So I had to find an outlet to be successful, and I could come to Disneyland and have a whole day and immerse myself.
Flying saucers.
One of the highlights
Someday they're going to pull
was the summer of
archival footage of us on
'65 when Great Moments
Ouija's
with Mr.
flying
Lincoln
tires.
opened Disneyland.
I remember that.
So impressed impressive to me that I said right then and there, I've got to work for this company. To a 17-and-a-half-year-old kid, the only way it could work at that point was as an ice cream vendor at Disneyland. I've tried to keep that naivete that gets beat out of me.
Right? It's like
so important to our business.
I'm going to bite the very top of the circular scoop of ice cream. I'm sorry, Tony. I love you. You gave me Figment, but you eat ice cream here. Sorry.
And after we were done, Breck says, Dad, that's the best thing I've ever seen. You've got to do it. He goes, okay, we're doing that. Michael then says, we have to show that Disneyland is waking up, that there's a new vitality here.
Most of the major movie directors today grew up on the wonderful world of Disney.
They are lowering them into the old Adventure through Outer Space building. They had to raise the roof a little bit.
Is a big input from those kinds of people.
Star Tours represented a radical departure for Disney. It was the first attraction based on a non-Disney movie.
They kept the
But the Imagineers recognized the cultural phenomenon and argued that the Star Wars universe, from the mind of George Lucas, held the same public esteem as classic Disney films.
George and Disney became a natural. Because a lot of the same story elements and excitement you find in George's films were a product originally of Walt's films and are more or less, I see it as a continuation of the greatest in entertainment, a marriage.
When is a group of these kinds of people, they spend every day thinking up ways to entertain people, going around the world looking at new technologies, figuring out how to adapt those
Think about, like,
technologies to a
Bob
creative
Iger
form.
doesn't come to a
And I
lot
hope
of attractions.
nobody ever learns their names, so they'll go and try to steal them from us.
Eisner
I won't mention them anymore.
always
But they are really fabulous.
It dawned on me the significance was the day they delivered R2-D2 to my desk from Lucasfilm. And I was like, wow, this is the real deal. This is really R2-D2 to my desk. All the model builders were standing there staring at it. I go, is that the real? Yeah, that's the real deal.
Wait, can you put a bit of that on there?
Frank was more the technology guy.
And this is my counterpart, R2-D2. Welcome to the Star Ride to Tomorrowland Space. Good, China.
He calls it something else. He didn't call it Star Tours.
Mando Bonotto,
I didn't hear it, but he calls it something else.
The ride system machinery remained a question mark until the Imagineers discovered a rare flight simulator technology. A sealed enclosure tilted and pitched along multiple
It was only built for, like, the Air Force to use. It wasn't supposed to be for
Simulators were
anything
being used to train pilots and astronauts. We took that technology directly from the space programs. And
They just
brought
bought
in
it
at the
from
very
the
highest
space
level
program.
and
They just
started
like
exploring
gave
that
them the money and just
sold
took them
those
away.
devices
And did
were
what they needed to
means
do
that
with
we would
it.
do something
I
so crazy
like
with
how
it.
they even mentioned
I was struggling with the worry that how are we going to put Star Wars, an endless universe, in a
Star
box?
Wars in a box like this.
And when I went over there and realized I could feel what Luke Skywalker
But
or
it
Han
was,
Solo felt like
it had
living
never
in
been
Falcon.
done before, so
I
that
came home and I
it was
said,
the right
that Achilles
time
heel
to do
of making this real.
Screen
is
rides
solved.
aren't inherently bad. They're good for when you need them. In this case, you couldn't build all these sets that appear on screen. Like, there was no way for that to be a physical
A
ride.
70mm motion picture projection system on a moving motion base that was generated.
Like, you can't fly through space with believability.
The projector fell apart. It was a miracle.
With physical sets.
ST-45.
But now we rely on it for things we could do physical, which is, that's the problem.
Like when you take Harry Potter and bring it from screen to screen instead of from scene
Like
to scene.
a circle vision.
Ratatouille is,
started
that's
the way
Ratatouille's
saying,
biggest problem. There's
you
so
know, I
many
think
things
as
that
we go
could have been
forward,
physical and
movies or
impressive
media
and really
are
cool.
gonna become
And that
more
ride could have been
integrated
something
into
very,
the
very
experience.
special.
Not
And
to let
instead
come
of just
and
kind of
sit
like,
in a standard theater and watch something. More of, I'm going to have projection combined with sets and ride vehicles to immerse you in different ways.
Got to do what you always want to do, that trench run. Up the Death Star.
Designing a ride is very much like designing a movie. You do what you like, and you hope everybody else will like it. I think the original spark was something that people sitting in a room find exciting.
George, I have to warn you. George, you need to know things.
With technology so advanced, coupled with characters so popular, the response was off the charts. Guests gladly stood in a 4-hour line that extended down Main Street. Management kept Disneyland open for 60 straight
60 hours, yeah.
Somebody already asked us today, how do you top this?
Just because they wanted to?
No, there's demand. The line never went away.
How do you top
Now we can't even get people to come to the opening of a Star Wars land.
You know.
What did we do? Oh yeah, Videopolis time. Clubbing at Disneyland.
Michael and Frank had doubled the budget on updating the theme park.
Making Disneyland hip.
During which time they opened a teenage
It worked,
dance club,
man.
premiered the park's first 3D film, and launched Star Tours.
I think that's a big part of
When
why
Michael and Frank
this
raised
older
ticket prices
fandom started to
30%,
exist. I think because
increased.
they started to become a hipper
Michael
thing.
and Frank were
They started to
a
become in
breath of
touch
fresh
with
air.
pop culture. At
They
that
saw Disneyland as a cooler place than we at the time saw it. They thought this was right in the cultural vibe.
Yeah, I mean, it was
today,
the
and
biggest thing.
it paid off at
The
Disneyland.
pop
The audience
culture
came,
involved at its
the
height
younger audience came.
when it's relevant.
Those were big shocks to the system, which is exactly what they wanted to do.
As a salute to the creative spirit of a new era, Michael Eisner officially changed the name, WED Enterprises, to Walt Disney Imagineering.
So do you have any thoughts on that?
It's fine.
Michael believed that parks had to be differentiated.
What was weird, the
He thought
public
the
could
great
understand
genius of Epcot was that it was unlike
They were already called
the Magic Kingdom.
Imagineers.
He was very
They're wet
behind
Imagineers.
doing a studio tour.
Flush with cash,
here we go.
Michael and Frank applied their Midas touch to building a third theme park in Florida. The concept for a Hollywood studio backlot tour was hardly original.
This
Walt
was
had
hard
always wanted to give people a peek backstage at
because
movie
now this
making.
park is also.
Disney's alliance with MGM would
That's
be
what
a
that arch
throwback
looks like
to
under all that
classic
crap.
Hollywood
they
era.
Michael Eisner's personality here was incredibly exuberant. He brought his movie-making skill to this business. He wanted punchier, more marketable concepts. His exuberance could be seen as just kind of crazy. You couldn't keep up with him.
I just love how
Michael was like a
excited
kid
he
in a
was
candy
about
shop.
it.
He was, he's trying to run the whole Disney company in the Disney studio, but he was over here all the time, here at Imagineering with a t-shirt and a baseball cap on,
He
hanging
just
out with
wanted,
us.
he loved it.
We had fresh new eyes now
You
and
know,
a
this is
fresh
one of my favorite parts
approach.
about this documentary.
Because
Seeing
frankly, with Tokyo
him
Disneyland
actually, like,
was
on
pretty
site
much
with the
a
blueprints,
duplication
like,
of
standing in the
elements that
dirt.
were either here in Disneyland or
That
in
would be
Disneyland,
us.
and that's not very much fun to work
Yeah,
on.
it'd be like,
as a
I don't want to
designer.
run the
It
movie.
doesn't
So I'm just going to
need the creative
Imagineering. Let's
juices
see what they're
flowing.
doing.
We
What
were
else
kind of
guys
given
up to?
license to begin pushing the envelope a little bit more, to make things not just very good or good enough, but to make things excellent.
When we first got the idea, it was to build a smaller studio tour, and we looked at it, and I can
building in
remember
the front
Michael
is the only
saying,
one still
it's
there."
fantastic, there's just one thing that's wrong with it. That's too small. This has got to be a real production facility, as well as a tour. This is our next gate.
So ambitious.
We started out
We
here
didn't
with a
I don't
relatively
think
small
years ago
park
we
that was gonna
respected
be
it the
a
same way
half-a-day
we did
experience
Epcot
for
7.
guests, and was gonna be a
Studios
kind of
was
a fun,
ambitious.
small
It was
complement to
ambitious
the
and
other two
different.
parks. And each
And
time
special and challenging.
Michael came over to WED to look at it, he added another attraction, or he added another idea, or we were foolish enough to come up with another idea, and he always liked
But the
it.
park, and I'm glad
And
they
as a
really talk
result,
about
what we ended up with was a park
was a
that's much bigger
giant
than I think
success. Like
any
they
of us
closed the
envisioned
capacity,
at
and they
the
couldn't.
beginning.
He'll tell you later they couldn't add stuff fast enough to make capacity. Look at the Crossroads statue being sculpted. It's a great footage of Mickey.
We welcome you to a Hollywood that never was and always will be.
Disney's new recreation is a recreation of the golden age of Hollywood. Here amid Art Deco splendor are the famous Chinese Theater, the Brown Derby, Hollywood Boulevard. This is a sanitized version of fantasy Hollywood.
Now it's really
For the
sad.
marquee attraction, entitled The Great Movie Ride, the Imagineers glorified the history of
So
cinema
this is the
through modern
crying part.
theatrics. Live
Yeah, I
action
got
combined
really
with animatronic movie stars.
one
Cast member
died
tour
here,
guides took guests
No, someone
on a
died.
sentimental trip through
This
memorable
ride
moments
died.
from the
This
silver
poor,
screen.
beautiful ride.
Just a gliding transition From production to what
such a
comes out at the other end of production, to
It's
the
always
magic,
gonna
to the fantasy of what those movies were and what they stood for.
There's no way that one
Kleenex is going to double its business on that. It is so nostalgic, it's so warm, and when you get to the Casablanca scene, I mean, no one's going to hold back.
You'll always have Paris.
We just came off the great movie ride. And
I love these
Disney outdid themselves this time.
It is. They were all different experiences. They were completely different days that you spent at those parks. Get it, Midas Touch? Do you get it?
Michael Eisner, Frank Wells had a great yin and yang working relationship, kind of a throwback to the Walt and Roy O. Disney, the business side and the creative side working together.
Michael was like a fountain of ideas, millions of them. Really great ones, so-so ones, and then really ugly ones.
Really ugly
As this fountain bubbled over with ideas, Frank would reach in and grab the excellent ones. Michael tolerated that. He expected it. Frank would say,
that's where it all fell apart.
Michael, we're not going to do that. He goes, oh, okay, maybe you're right.
This
It was
show
a relationship that was
captures
very
when
open
Michael,
and we all
lost
saw it.
control.
What do you mean when?
One Imagineering idea poured forth to answer a need from Disneyland operators who identified an empty corner of the park. To draw more foot traffic, they demanded a water thrill ride be built with common off-the-shelf technology and wedged into Bear Country. Given the parameters,
That makes Splash Mountain sound way less impressive than it is.
So I was driving to work one day that summer, and
Not really. I mean, it's a log flume, though. It's certainly nothing new. But I think they did such a beautiful ride. Not the Disneyland one. The Disney one's garbage.
Created back for the bicentennial needed to
But
go
the other ones are
past
good.
its prime.
Wasn't that the one they talked about?
Well, I don't talk about all of them. Yeah. I love this color footage.
And so we had all these wonderful figures.
Mark, look at this
By the time
Mark
I got
Davis
to work
character.
after an hour of driving, I had
so
really the basics for what.
And they
became
work,
Splash
it's
Mountain.
Tony's credit, they work so beautifully. They work so beautifully in Splash, too.
The solution seemed challenging, being the interior of a mountain.
I'm amazed they even mentioned it.
Problematic film named Song of
Shocked.
Recycled
It wasn't,
animatronics
they didn't
from
think it was
closed
problematic.
show.
There was a
And upgraded
VHS
standard
release still
long
after
film
that.
They did not.
No, it was later. It was like
We
mid
had boats
90s.
that were manufactured by an outside vendor that had done many flume rides around the
If it
world.
was really that problematic,
But
they
we had
wouldn't
the
have picked it
biggest
for a
flume.
theme.
We had
They
a
would have picked
total
something
rock.
that.
When we took the original boat down
And they
the
still
lift,
weren't
we
doing
brought
all
it out,
IP
and the
stuff at
boat
this time, so it
got
could have
filled
just
with
been
water.
the America Sings Animals hosting a log flume. So it wasn't, it really
So back
wasn't.
to the drawing
That's the
board, and
first
we
time in this
designed
whole
boats.
documentary series I feel like they kind
It took about
of told a
9
little
months
white lie.
of extra.
I love this
downtime
tiny
before we
lot.
got the
I
ride
know.
open.
Can we get this a play
Instead of
set? Can I just
making
do
our
that all
October
day?
deadline, we were opening July 17th, which
I didn't
was
know it was
Disneyland's birthday
delayed that much.
in 1989.
Tokyo, Florida.
You still keep
That's
saying
all right.
that
I
you
mean,
go.
come on, it's like this. You're like looking down, you can't see the
Disney?
bottom.
Oh, you guys see how bad it is. Like the Brer Rabbit animatronics look like they're from Chuck E. Cheese.
I got totally wet on my bangs.
The America Sings AAs are better than the ones they built custom.
Splash Mountain
The
and getting the
people
right
coming
amount
off
of
the
wet
right line,
on
she's
a
like,
day.
totally rad.
The Imagineers had solved a complex logistics puzzle, and by default, the team uncovered a recipe for design success.
I don't design anything for the first ride. I design it for the 20th ride. So you start to think, what is it that's appealing about something that I want to ride on it 20 times?
But they're the same as well. They talk about it with pirates. Like,
I've
oh,
kind
you
of broken
mean
that
when
down
people go
into
back through, they'll see
3
something they didn't see
areas.
the first
The
time?
first
Like,
one, I think, is one that
that's
allows
the
you to go to
detail.
a place
That's
that
what
you
it's all
couldn't
about.
go without Disney. Back in the 50s, when virtual reality was something 50 years away, Walt had a virtual reality here. You could go out into a jungle, you could see all the animals that inhabit it, you could be threatened, you could be engaged in storytelling, and it was absolutely real. It was a place that couldn't be envisioned without Disney. My second centers around thrill. think about it. We all want to get very close to that death word. We just don't want to experience it.
Close
so
to
your
death
greatest
without
thrill experiences let you experience what it is to get almost to that point, and then we pull back. And the third one is more proprietary to Disney than anything, and that would be the emotional appeal. All of us that were able to demonstrate that we had a vision, we were elevated to direct relationships with Frank and Michael.
In 1990, Michael Eisner proposed an ambitious 10-year dream he called the Disney Decade, an expansion plan that included hotels, shopping centers, and water parks. However, at the heart of it was another Magic Kingdom on a different continent.
Here we go.
Hello, I'm Michael Eisner.
Hello.
I'm in the lobby of Walt Disney Imagineering. Today, Disney Imagineers are still creating fantasy and magic. At the present time, they're busy planning and designing our newest theme park, Euro Disneyland, just outside of Paris, France. Walt Disney dreamed of a place where families could go have fun together, a place of fantasy and magic. Disneyland was the first of such places, and Imagineering is where the real magic is created. I believe it's the most magical organization in the world. Wow. How'd you guys get here?
It was between France and Spain. They chose France, which he was advised
Michael
against.
Eisner, you know, had great
But he
ambition.
chose France
He was
over
on the
Spain.
Sunday night TV show. He's sitting there on the desk, so he's the man.
Which is
He
kind of
wasn't just
interesting that it
a
was
typical CEO type executive. He wanted to be part of the creative process.
Well, because it's in the
Disneyland Paris was the mark that they were
Also,
to
you'll
make.
see why they won't build it out there.
Imagine being able to play with the
I don't know what that
expensive
bird
toys
is.
that make Disneyland come to life.
I don't
On the
remember
other
what that's
hand,
from.
imagine trying to take the place of Walt Disney, legendary founder.
You're not intimidated by the name and the shoes to fill and the legacy?
I'm not intimidated by day. I think in my subconscious when I'm asleep at night, I wake up once in a while thinking, who am I kidding?
If Walt Disney had created the most charming theme park, and Roy Disney had created the most spectacular one, Michael Eisner had to distinguish himself.
Michael's mandate on that was to create the most beautiful theme park. It was going to have his name and Frank Wells on it, so we want this to be the most beautiful theme park ever.
Beautiful castle.
So maybe they'll say something about what
To
was there
satisfy
at
the refined taste of Europeans, Michael urged the Imagineers to surpass the exquisite attention to detail of Disney's
They
original
overbuilt a little. I don't really agree with everything they say in this episode.
My first day at Imagineering, John Hansch asked the question, he goes, can you tell me Walt Disney's 4 levels of detail? I have no idea. He goes, well, let me tell you. Detail level 1, you're out in the countryside, you're looking over the trees, and you see the church steeple.
We interviewed Coulter Wynn.
Detail level 2, you've walked
The
into
reopen,
town,
rededication
and you just come to Main
Coulter
Street. You can see the
does
parkway,
great,
the median
great
strip, the trees, the
Coulter
benches.
did Sunset
Detail
Boulevard.
level 3, you're standing on the
Buena
sidewalk,
Vista
and now you're
Street.
looking at a
Just think about
fine
how
house.
great those
You can see the
areas
color,
are.
the texture, the materials, the scale, the architectural style.
I like this whole idea about the four.
Detail level 4, you're actually going up to the front door, you've grabbed the door knocker, and you're knocking on the door with the door
There is a
knocker. You feel
method to the
temperature of the
magic.
metal, the texture of the metal, whether or not it's been
These
deformed,
things are
if there's
important.
paint on it,
They
if the paint is
absolutely make
slightly
the
chipped.
difference, and it's why you connect with stuff. And I think
Here at
after you watch all 6 episodes, I think people at home will be able to put together the problem of Galaxy. I think just from watching this, you hear them say things and you're like, oh yeah, kind of
pretty good advice.
You start to put together those things, and maybe I don't know. Before anyone starts a project, they should just watch these.
to Walt Disney Company.
The Magic Kingdom as a park was
logical
developed
design
30 years
sense
ago
and just
and will be brought
designing
to
it because
France
you think that's what
intact.
it should look like.
It will
or
be
what you
different
think should be
in that it
there.
will take
But when
advantage
you
of but have
really break
respect
down
for
into, like, they
the
show
French
that
culture.
4 levels, you have to look
As
at
a
all
symbolic
those
goodwill
different things. Does
gesture,
it make
Michael
sense?
Eisner presented a tongue-in-cheek gift to the government and citizens of
Only
France.
then can you connect emotionally with.
But when the stock debuted on the Paris Exchange, French communists pelted Michael with eggs.
Yeah, this is crazy.
Yeah.
I like how he
All of
has
a
to keep
sudden,
a smile
the
on
eggs
his
started
face.
flying and
Well, he does until the
flowering.
end.
There was a
Then they're like, let's get
French
out of here.
caution the left in France were
I mean,
saying,
this is normal for France. Just driving on the road, you see like protest billboards everywhere. It's a very French thing to do. They're very free people, and they like to let their voice.
Coming to France, this is the land of castles. How do you do a castle in the land of castles? Well, our solution was push the fantasy.
I'm sure he's very upset.
It's very much based on the Ivan Earl illustrations that Walt Disney's team looked to for inspiration for Sleeping Beauty. The box trees, the sculptured hillsides, and the very, very pushy fantasy castle.
He has a biography. Does he have an autobiography?
One of the tricks that John Hench taught me was if you want to make something soar, if you want to make it look like it's taller, you start by darkening the colors at the base, and as it goes up, you light the value of the color.
This castle.
And we did that on the castle where we deliberately staged the colors.
It's a photograph wall from every angle.
And you want that to be a very inviting,
it's really
welcoming, very reassuring
view.
If we don't nail the castle, I'm not doing my job.
He's got lots of
I'm just wondering,
the castle was a lot of work. That one I bird dogged personally. Went through all the drawings and made revisions.
My dream is to get him for
followed everything
I would
kind
love
of through the process.
I don't know how
didn't want it to drift the wrong way in any kind of direction, so I just wanted to make sure that that came out stellar.
Fantasyland is going along swimmingly. You got the castle almost halfway resurrected, and the cat head for the hedge maze is looming his little face across the landscape.
News from Main Street. Main Street's coming along at a breakneck pace.
Right now it's hot and dusty, and before that it's muddy. It's never in between.
The vehicles are coming along great. It's looking cool. We've got all kinds of molding nightmares and things happening in the field.
We're just all over the map. What can I say?
I feel like they're not.
Here we are at Euro Disneyland, looking at the bustling activity 6 months prior to turnover to operations. We basically found that when the sun comes out, it's an immediate national holiday to celebrate the fact that the sun still does shine on Paris. Wouldn't it look neat with construction workers, though?
That's 6 months before opening.
Even Imagineer expertise had limits. They turned to old world talents of local European artisans. Hand-woven tapestries and decorative stained glass told the story of Sleeping Beauty with unsurpassed authenticity.
So you think that
All
footage that
his
we just
life,
saw was
Paul
that just
Chapman
like
created solemn designs for churches, including the window restoration
internal,
of Notre
maybe
Dame
private.
Cathedral. He came out of retirement to create art that would make people smile.
We have to assess the shapes of colour, each one delineated, surrounded by lead. They go together like a mosaic of colour. You must be absolutely accurate. Particularly in this Disney, there's no room for artistic interpretation. Everything has to be absolutely right. It must be drawn so that
this park
the
is so
painter
special,
gets
and it's a shame it's been through so much
of what is expected of it.
Like not only what the Imagineers did, but this thought of like authenticity, and it'll be Disney, but we'll also hire like world-renowned artists to help.
Throughout Fantasyland, the Imagineers emphasized lost arts and mythical elements. They added glazed tile rooftops, handcrafted copper weather vanes, a giant beanstalk,
This is all modern footage
and a
to shoot
native
around the
carousel.
maintenance problems.
Because
Because so many of those, like the first time we went, so many of those shingles were destroyed. You could see it in some of those shots, like shingles are just all kinds of destroyed.
Colored glass. The trees have wonderful, exotic, fanciful shapes to them. So everything is slightly out of this world. You've gone to an extraordinary world of your dreams.
The best Frontierland.
We know that there's a love affair with Europeans
Without
and French for the American West. And so it was really important to us to focus that land around the most spectacular attraction we have. So Big Thunder was moved to the very center of
Walking to Land, there's the fort
and by
at the
doing
end.
that,
The fort is huge, and
everything
it's also
centers
a
around the
walk-through
excitement
attraction,
that
the fort.
ride brings
And
as you
then
walk
just
around the river.
you walk through the fort and centered out
Just
in
as
the water.
Sleeping Beauty
Big
Castle
Thunder,
lured the guests
and
into
the town
Fantasyland.
opens,
The
like to the
towering
sides.
pinnacles of Big Thunder Mountain
It's so
beckoned the
great.
guests
what it's really
Frontierland.
yeah. So like the Phantom Manor and like
Before the adaptation,
the Lucky
the
Nugget and
Imagineering
everything's out
studied
this side, the
the
saloon,
original version
and then out
designed
that
for
way you
Disneyland
have like
in
a
the
whole
late
nother
70s.
street. So it's like this whole Frontierland town wraps around the waterfront.
Tony Baxter first drew inspiration from old Mark Davis sketches
The
of
only
the
thing that's missing,
unbuilt
it feels
Western
so
River
real that it
expedition.
needs streetmosphere. They need
He modeled the
Frontierland
environment
streetmosphere.
on the dramatic
To
American
really just bring it to
landscape
life.
of
It
Utah's
needs to feel like
Bryce
a real
Canyon.
town.
To fabricate 2 acres of heavily eroded rock work, a rudimentary technique developed into a full-blown artistic discipline. Sculptors carved, chiseled, and brushed the surface into a fossilized frontier.
The tough thing was taking a roller coaster, which is a series of hairpins and unusual formations that you would never see in reality, and putting rock work around that so that people look at it and they believe in it. It looks like, rather than a train going around in a corkscrew, which is totally meaningless, it looks like, well, we had to do that because the thing came to the edge of a butte, and the only way out of there is to make a right-hand turn. So it was an exercise in making a presentable shape and monument that said Frontier was a lot of fun and didn't look contrived.
The team produced 9 model iterations while attempting to integrate the mountain and track layout. When in doubt, they turned to veteran Claude Coates for guidance.
Claude's skills, I think, were the things at Disneyland that most intrigued me. Being lost in the caverns of the pirate ride, going inside the atom and adventure through inner space. These were things that were absolute high watermarks in my childhood because I was the character getting to go into those worlds. So the goal in Big Thunder was coming up with a thrill attraction, but through how you experience going through an environment, through the tight spaces, through darkness, through narrow caverns. All of this amplifies the thrill. So that a ride that's actually quite tame feels a lot more thrilling than it might be.
It's in keeping with Disney tradition. An experience, a show with runaway mine trains that whisk guests through dark tunnels and mine shafts, past raging waterfalls and into deep canyons. Big Thunder Mountain Railroad will be an adventure that's as downright wild as the reckless days of the Gold Rush.
Do that, they were having issues, so they
For the Euro Disneyland version, the Imagineers kept the thrill of the classic, scaled it up, and added more mystery. Guests boarded the train on land, dipped beneath the river through a mine shaft tunnel, and emerged onto an island.
Under the water.
When asked his opinion of the monumental enhancement, Tony responded, "The 4th time's a charm."
I love the big arch, the rock arch, the riverboat.
On the opposite side of the park, the Imagineers reconceived an area that repeatedly
talk about
outdated
Phantom
itself.
Manor or Pirates.
Discoveryland became a
sad,
collection of different
they're
futures
the 2
imagined
best
throughout
versions
history.
of those rides.
This version of tomorrow presented a more timeless place, one that encouraged exploration.
The curvature is really meant to create a sense of discovery, to take you away from the rest of the park. And this plaza opens
That's
up
from the
to
Space
a
Mountain
piece
TV
that we feel is a real symbol
which
for
is
Discoveryland, and that is the Orbitron. The Orbitron is a ride, and it is a piece of art. Its overall
We
look
got to see it because
has the look
the
of
2
like the
Imagineers
Leonardo
we
da
had
Vinci planetary
Stage
model.
89 were the guys
When people
who
see
did
that, it becomes the signature piece of this
built all the special
technological
effects
but
for
fun
Space Mountain
approach that we're having at Discoveryland.
So we saw, they showed us some home movies of them.
As
The day they
Imagineers,
installed
when we start a project, the first thing we do
gun,
is intense research.
installed the
to really
cannon,
try
it
and
was
understand
fascinating.
our audience,
Dropping the cannon
what they
into
love, what they
place.
know, their culture.
There's home video of
We paid
them.
homage to
They thought it
Jules
was
Verne,
funny at the
the
top of
father
the
of science
top
fiction,
of the
by
mountain.
taking
There's
our
a
Tomorrowland
track
and
piece
giving
that
a
goes like up into
steampunk
space,
kind of
like where
retro
you would
look.
launch. They put a bell on it, and then they challenge each other to go
Even
up
though
and ring the
the main
bell.
thrill attraction
Management
opened a
forced
few
them to
years
take
later,
it down.
the early plans for
That is
Discoveryland
such a great
always
sign.
included a
It is a
version
sin
of
that that
Space
sign is
Mountain.
not there. Hyperspace
This
Mountain
was
needs to
the
go.
ultimate marriage of a story, a vision, and a technology. We had a
It's
wonderful
not,
opportunity
for
of
me,
using
it's not a
Jules
fun
Verne's story,
coaster.
from the Earth
It's a
to
little
the Moon.
nauseating,
In
but
that
I
story,
appreciate
there was
so
a very
much
large
of what they
cannon
did.
shot this train from the Earth to the Moon.
It was also a very early. looping steel coaster and you put it, it was the first time it had been put inside, so I understand like some of those challenges. This cannon needs to work again.
And create it
They need to
with a
fix
launch
this cannon.
that starts
No,
with a catapult.
doesn't recoil.
If you're going to go to space, we might as well fire you off. So the doability of this was not all that easy. We had to create our own catapult
From the
launch.
Earth to the moon, they shot you to the moon.
Our ride engineers figured out how to do this.
These
This
are
is,
the
in fact,
gentlemen
the
we had
first
at Stage 89
incline
were the
catapult
ones who
launch
figured out this
system
cannon.
ever created.
This cannon, yeah.
Pretty ridiculous that doesn't work anymore.
The roller coaster also featured the first onboard
Now
audio
that Disney
system
owns
played
it,
a
it's getting to the point where
synchronized
it's
score
ridiculous
from
that
an
so much stuff is
individual
still
guest's point of view.
They've owned it for a year. I love that they're going to spend money on the other park, but they need to give them money to fix some of these big maintenance things now.
The
time
Euro
is gone.
Disneyland Space Mountain represented the new gold standard.
Everything has to be consistent with the overall theme. It's one of the strengths that we at
It's such a
Disney
beautiful
have over
park.
other
Even
people.
through
The
my
integrity
first show, and obviously it's getting
and the
better and better. They're
inclusion
getting
of
better
all
about
the
maintenance, but
components
it's,
make
you
this
can see it. It
really a
shines
worthwhile
through
Disney
even
experience.
everything that's fallen apart. What a beautiful job was done. If that park, if you could put that park and Disney Sea together, it would be just so perfect.
Et maintenant, je déclare Euro Disneyland officiellement ouvert.
Ouvert. His French was terrible. Ouvert.
I think it's definitely the most beautiful park we've ever done. I'm really pleased and happy. It's a tribute to all the Imagineers that have been involved in it for the last 5 years. That we actually, this is the new kids park, if you will, second generation.
It is more than a dream come true. I wish every single one of you were here to enjoy this day and to feel it the way it did happen. And it's all because of you. Thank you all.
He looks like that really old reporter on your news channels. Like that guy. They're outside of version.
With this most precious of Magic Kingdoms.
The opening
Main
night party,
Street, the best
electrical
Main
parade,
Street.
all of its twinkling lights,
best
classical music is going to come down the street.
It's a lot of our facades. There's a lot of embellishments, though. The interior is so much
We have a
more
bunch of
beautiful.
invited guests.
And
Very
arcades.
fine-looking gentleman there, and
going-
he's got a beautiful lady with him in the Chanel suit, with a pillbox hat, the whole thing. And I go, pipe smoking. I mean, pipe smoking tells you they're very sophisticated, and it's a prove it to me kind of attitude. So I go, oh great, this is our audience, pipe smoking. And I'm thinking, how are we going to entertain these people? They turn the lights out on Main Street. Only the parade lights come on. They're twinkling. The classical music that everyone in Europe knows is now blaring.
It's easier to get
And then I
around
look
if
over,
there's no nighttime
and I can't find the pipe smoker. I can't find his wife. Where's this couple? I look just 2 rows back of the people in the parade. They're waltzing
The lights of winter. Yeah, they had those on Main Street in Paris.
And I thought, you know what? You've had a class system. You've had people that have to behave. Where do you get permission to be a child again?
If you make the environment so beautiful, if you make the fantasy seem so real, then adults
It really looks like
feel
that.
that they
That's not
can
really
join
that
in the play,
overexposed.
that it's not embarrassing
It's
to be a
that
kid.
pretty.
Are you running? Oh, you must shoot When I was living over here in Paris, I remember my neighbor, who is French, saying to me, she says, well, I'm going to go out today and see how that park of yours is. And it was very testy. And she came back and she said to me, you know, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be.
So French.
Before the agreement between Disney and the French government, many Europeans feared the threat of cultural imperialism and were offended by the overbearing attitude of Disney's top brass. One executive was quoted as saying, "We're building something immortal, like the pharaohs built the pyramids."
Probably not a good thing to say.
History of culture. Everything is very intellectual in France. Then comes Disney. It's a little, mouse. It's stories for kids.
And if you compare to the Molières of the world or the big theater writers, painters, you have this kind of a perception of, is that culture?
Some French critics have described Euro Disney as a cultural Chernobyl, a horror of plastic and
That was the line they used for years, that cultural Chernobyl line. They put up those signs for everything, though. Yeah, it seems they don't go, but like the French are just, they don't like anything. It's just, they're just banners tied to buildings.
Have this kind of a arrogance about it. Here, in France especially, any meal where you sit, it's a tradition you have wine, or at least you have access to wine. Well, that was not done. So clearly, when you do this, immediately the reaction is, okay, they don't understand us, or they don't respect us, or, they don't care.
I'm amazed their Main Street is so, like, old town America.
The parks are a living, breathing thing.
That's cool to them, though. That takes them away.
Okay.
There was no wine served in the
It works for everyone. Like, none of us grew up with that America. So it's just a pretty place that's so welcoming that it doesn't matter. You don't have to have some knowledge or connection to that America.
This perfect storm combined with bad press resulted in much lower attendance than expected. Hotel occupancy hovered at 60%.
No, like they love the American West. Like that's why like they have hotels.
What we charged a guest in France as to what we charged a guest in Florida, and that was just really stupid. It was just stupid. We built too many hotel rooms. We spent too much money.
She's on a cruise. Oh. She's not on a cruise.
Anyway,
I don't think
what was I saying before someone entered the building?
What was there, I think, is outstanding, and is what we need to do to bring in the local audience.
Yeah, so like there were so many things themed to the American West, because they just had an affinity for that. They had the Buffalo Bill show, there's a hotel theme to the West, Frontierland. It's just a thing that
people feel very good about taking their
were
kids
aware
to
of
museums.
and had a connection.
That's what they do on weekends. We thought we're going to
did a lot of museum things. They did a lot of walkthroughs. They apparently like walkthrough stuff. So they did a lot of these museum type things.
That costs money.
Every land has a walkthrough. So that the arcades on Main Street, Frontierland has that. So the West walkthrough. Adventureland has Aladdin walkthrough. Fantasyland has multiple in the castle and the Alice Maze. And then Discoveryland, you have the Nautilus walk.
Somewhere there's a quote by Walt. He even said that these dreams cost a lot of money, and that's probably the one thing that plagued him through his whole life, was just getting the money right. I think after Disneyland Paris, you can spend too much. There is such a thing as spending too much on these parks.
What would you say has been your biggest problem?
Did they overspend on Paris?
Well,
I think they did, but I think where they overspent was hotels. They built way too many hotels. That was the problem.
2 years after opening, Euro Disneyland teeters on the brink of bankruptcy. A complicated restructuring.
Those park attendants would have been fine. Like what they could have done was just build. They built way too many.
The Imagineers changed the name Euro, which implied commerce, to Paris.
They opened with all of them. Like they never added one after. They just opened with all
the
of them.
move symbolized a rebirth, but the financial ordeal left management humble.
Yeah, they had to add wine very quickly. It was the first Magic Kingdom to have wine. Yeah.
There was a lot of analysis about what went right or wrong in Paris. Paris hadn't taken off as fast as they had hoped. But I think Michael and Frank were very excited about the public reception to Disney-MGM Studios.
I love that they talked about how popular Spain is. It brought me a lot of joy. I feel like it always gets glossed.
Star Tours.
Look, stuff works.
Yeah, right? Look at all these things functioning. Oh my God! Oh my God! Maintenance isn't bad. You just hate Disney.
We couldn't develop projects fast enough. The only pressure it feels like we had at that
These
time
documentaries will actually open up people's eyes to things we've been saying too.
Look at the globes!
Was kind of the creative funnel through which everything went. He was our advocate. He was our voice. He was the one we would go to with ideas. And he would say, that's a great idea. Well,
in a minute, there were several things that no longer function. I mean, that's bad, right?
What sold that idea was that a ride system would behave differently than what you expect. The elevator car actually traveled horizontally across the floor into another shaft, and I remember Michael saying, "Frank, did you hear that? The elevator, it doesn't just go up and down, it goes that way." And it just got his attention because it was something new and innovative, and actually kind of scary because we didn't know how we were going to do it.
Just tell me how it's going to forward back.
Frank says, "You know, all it takes is money, Michael. Do you want it? He says, let's do it. This is home run. Let's do it." So
I love how
it was so
Frank
cool.
Wells was Mike Eisner's father, basically. He's like,
doing this.
I want to do it. It's like, all it takes is money, Michael. Money, do it. He's like, I want to do it. All right. There's a model.
Hide under his
I think that's the same model that's in
draw everything in AutoCAD. Before then, everything was drawn by hand.
All it takes is money. Well, then,
Tyler
no.
Terra was the first
I don't want.
embraced AutoCAD, and
I don't want animatronic. They're expensive.
Should all be done by
They
computer.
cost too many money. What they do with Bob Chapek, I think, is they put out Monopoly money so he can understand like what they're actually spending. They write like bigger numbers on it though, and then like people come in and they're like, "Bob, we want to build this ride." He's like, "You can have 2 1." They're like, "Bob, it's not enough." He's like, "That or nothing." And crosses his arm.
Develop an elevator system that's going to transport
You get 5.
elsewhere. That was
I almost think it's like just hoarding all the hundreds.
system to have
This is how much you have to spend. If you don't spend it all, you get
out of an elevator
How
into
much?
another
I'm gonna go to the
Basically,
dollar
two different
store and
licenses.
get us some stickers.
Yes.
We're gonna use those.
Not to their knowledge.
A pair of electric motors sat on top of the elevator shaft. When the drum spun, a steel cable pulled the car up and down, faster than free fall. 13 stories in just over a
Those happy celebration on Earth.
We're good at developing technologies here, but we're also
What
good
is
at
that
using
eyeball
other people's
for?
Technologies. They usually
Could that
are
be for
frightened
Tower
out
of
their
Terror?
minds
Could they be
because, you know,
doing
they've
a new
done everything in their
eyeball?
power to do a certain thing
I
and
hope
not
so.
put people on these
Because the other one
systems
still
and,
doesn't
you know,
work.
restrict use. We're like, we want to put like 10 people
Dave,
on
put that eyeball in.
Dave, just walk it over.
It's
now.
already built. How much would it cost you to just drive it down?
No one will say.
Drive it down and install it, Dave.
His elevator.
They're not turning the cameras on. The eyeball won't work. Air Force One.
A daredevil by nature, Frank Wells climbed the highest mountain on 6 continents, a feat made possible by meticulous preparation. Frank applied that thinking to his 7th summit, the Walt Disney Company. He gave Imagineering the go-ahead to build a professional research and development lab.
This was a
Cloaked in
great decision.
secrecy, mathematicians, chemists, and Broadway
This
lighting
changed the
designers came together. Armed with patents and PhDs, this group of mad scientists experimented with big ideas.
Frank Wells drove this, modified electric car. It's like crazy. We did see him a lot at R&D. But he never came in with the vision saying, hey, I'm going to lead the way on this. It was more like, tell me why this is actually true. Convince me that this is actually what we should do. He came in skeptical every time, but he would listen.
Good creative management don't come up with the ideas. They don't execute the ideas. What they do is they act as an editor. You choose the best meal, then you hope they cook it well. And you keep coming back and saying, it's too hot, it's too cold, it's too green, it's too blue, whatever.
That's good.
We kind of pride ourselves on
I think
having
that's
a
testing
really wacky
Aquatopia.
group of people here. We want to look at problems from as many points of view as possible.
So is this a division
The
of
group that
Imagineering?
previously
Is this like
Research and
worked
development,
on
yeah.
Star Tours,
Okay.
simulators were big then. We wanted to
Yeah, you
take
see
kind
when,
of the
when,
next step.
like patents come
What
out,
if the
that's
simulator
what this
was on a
department's doing.
truck?
But then also like the, I
Combine
know
those
they have like the
two, drive
Department of
around
Carnegie
and have
Mellon and all
simulations
that
that
stuff.
happen as you're driving.
It's all
Decisions that you probably
interconnected.
wouldn't make in the middle of a project, but they're the kinds of decisions that you could stop build something, try things, build some more stuff, try things, and keep iterating until you get a combination that's right, and then launch a project around that.
So they don't talk about it, but the ride, if you look, the vehicles start out
Michael had been
not quite as a Jeep.
Why we shouldn't do it.
That's because it was supposed to be for Dick Tracy's
something
crime
in
stuff.
Adventureland. They had no room in Adventureland, and there was a whole document that came out. And as quick as Michael got that, he fired a document back saying, "Here's why we can't afford not to do it. It's emotionally
I didn't
relevant.
know that the park tried
It's
to
a
like
state-of-the-art technology that we have to jump on. We can't allow Disneyland to not be regarded as the supreme repository of new thinking." All of that was tremendously indicative of the way they thought.
But yeah, they're just passionate about it. They're like, no, we need to do this.
To make room in Adventureland, 500 trees were
ride that
planted and
changed
relocated.
everything.
The monorail even got rerouted. The Imagineers used the cramped location to their advantage.
Mummy here.
They hid the show building beyond the boundaries of the park by manipulating one's sense of space.
You ever wonder why that walk out to that ride feels so long? Because you're leaving the park.
For instance, the queue, we tried to set up the feeling that you're in an archaeological site. You get completely engrossed in the theme of the whole thing. We wanted to take and build that kind of a world the pirate ride had and add an excitement that the Star Tours has and put it into one package and make it happen to you.
For the first time, guests were encouraged to participate in the make-believe by deciphering a fictional
card made it on the
language.
While you wait in line, you'll be seeing booby traps and hidden rooms and chambers that you'll uncover and archaeology work going on. And this all builds up the story and really increases what will actually happen on the ride. When it's done, you'll be through about an hour-long experience.
We knew from the get-go that that was going to be a breakthrough attraction, using that ride system that has a motion base and makes you feel like you're hopping over stones or going down a set of stairs, and being able to tell that dynamic story in that way.
Once the engineers finished building the vehicle, the artists had to choreograph its movement. They recorded the programming on board
Like,
and
I
in real time.
I like the South American theme better. That's just a personal preference, though. But also the maintenance. I've never seen the boulder not work in Japan.
Bridge breaks, we fall into it. The vehicle lurches out of the suspension bridge and down the jungle road. This is the
Yeah, I've done this footage out there. It's always fun to see.
We're heading down towards the river's edge.
That's
and
gotta be
into
fun.
the skid.
That's gotta be a fun job. I don't know. It just seems like a fun thing to do. There's the bridge
We
they're
still
rebuilding next
use
year.
motion picture techniques in how we look at storytelling.
Look at
for
those sets,
attraction.
even with lights
How
on.
we set
they're
something
beautiful.
up,
Those snake
how it gets
heads.
paid off in the end. We're working usually in 4 minutes. We have to distill things down. Generally what we do is look at a film and say, are there aspirational moments, physical moments in there that are things that you would love to step into? It's not about replicating the story from the movie as you saw it. We try and
These
do
are the kind
part
of
that fits
expectations
best
I have
for
for
our
Rise of the
medium.
Resistance.
We look for that
This level.
nugget in the
And if
story
it's
that you
not
say,
this
I wish I
level, we're
could.
and many of us are gonna do this. But I think it will. I have some faith in this.
The one thing that came up again and again was the rolling ball.
Yeah, I think
thought, well,
so.
how are we going to do that? Ride vehicles
I think,
have to
like,
succeed
based
in
on how
forward
disappointed
motion.
I am
They
with the
can't
rest
back
of the
up.
land, I
They
feel like
can't
that
escape
has
from something that's coming at you. They have to
I
move
feel like that had to be the
constantly
main
towards
focus.
the end of the ride. One day I was sitting in a car wash, and I
Probably the
noticed
single
this
most
room
impressive
is moving around my car. It made me feel that my car was moving forward rather than the room was moving backward. And I said, there's the answer. If I told you you were moving backwards in your car and the rolling ball is coming forwards, you're going to believe it because your brain is already wired to buy that experience.
Next time, you're on your own.
Frank Wells' gut feeling paid off.
Drank
The
too much of
R&D
the fountain of youth. I'd
workflow
be
on
happy to
the
assist you with
Indiana
stuff.
Jones adventure proved a viable concept. Long-term innovation could drive business for what now seemed to be a limitless future.
One night I was home. I remember I got a call from one of my colleagues. He said, Wing, turn on the TV. Turn it. I said, why? He said, have you heard? I said, heard about what? Frank. I said, what do you mean? So as I was talking, I turned on the TV, and there he was on the street, a picture. And then right away, I knew it's not something good.
The helicopter took off Sunday morning with 5 people on board, the pilot and 4 passengers who were going skiing in the rugged terrain of the Ruby Mountains. One of those passengers was 62-year-old Frank Wells, the president of the Walt Disney Corporation. The Jet Ranger helicopter crashed. Frank Wells died instantly.
There are some griefs that have to be shared. Likewise, there are some joys so overwhelming that they should be shared as well. The songs and music you will hear today are not the songs of sorrow or of death. They are the songs that Frank Wells enjoyed.
Michael Eisner lost not only a friend, but his most trusted advisor. Left alone to face the ongoing financial struggles of Disneyland Paris, Michael retreated from creative responsibilities.
This is where
the Imagineers lost their champion. They honored Frank with a window on Main Street, USA. They paid homage to his spirit of adventure.
Frank had been such a great friend
He also
to
has
Imagineering
the,
that it devastated him.
There's the crate on the
And the tone changed a great deal. The chemistry wasn't there the way it had been. The heady days of the two of them being this visionary leadership of Imagineering seemed to be over after Frank died.
That ended up shifting Imagineering being, creatively like this, with creative slightly over the other disciplines, to really like this. It resulted in a spreadsheet looks like a much more logical argument than some artwork on the wall.
Sound familiar, kids?
It became a way of having to learn a new business, learning how to speak a new language. Everything had to have a purpose and a meaning, as opposed to just being delightful. And it was rough.
Wow.
Yeah, things got bad.
We were trying to figure out how to do
be
more with less, but this was like drastically less, like no theming. Theming was like a bad word. The appetite level for theme parks from a management standpoint seemed to be waning. All of that rock work and Western and medieval and all of these things that Magic Kingdom Park is all about, we don't do that anymore. And I remember hearing, we're not doing any more theme parks now.
What a way to end that show.
Wow. Okay, that was
Next week's gonna be. We're gonna have a lot of interesting things to talk about next week, I think.
I honestly thought it was gonna there was more to it. Like I didn't notice how long.
No, because that's the moment.
Yeah.
That's the moment everything changes. Is when Frank Wells dies. They're because things take so long. There's a little bit of lag in there, like Indiana Jones and some other things. But by the time we get to 98, 99, things start getting real rough. We can actually watch. There's a quick preview. Yeah, and that's in the next episode.
Yeah.
Let's see the preview.
Next on the Imagineering story.
Success is really about many, many failures. We're experimenting. We're trying things that we don't know if it'll work or not.
The Disney company knew what it did, and here we want to do something we know nothing about.
That was in
period of
motion
the company was very much one of fiscal discipline that we needed to bring a
We're
developer's
going to get into
mentality
California
to how we
Adventure
work here.
and Walt Disney Studios Paris. Maybe Disney Sea? Who knows? Who knows? All right, well, that's our watch along of the Imagineering Story, Episode 3, The Midas Touch. Thanks for watching along with us. Those of you watching live, we're now going to transition into our review of that episode. All right, the Plus Party rolls on with our now our review of Episode 3 of the Imagineering Story, which was titled The Midas Touch, which was about the arrival of Michael Eisner and Frank Wells to the company and how they affected Imagineering and the growth of the parks. So this show focuses on their arrival, making Disneyland hip and cool.
That was so
rad.
good.
Disneyland gets rad. And then we get into the creation of Disneyland Paris, and then the loss of Frank Wells and how that was we get that tease of things are going to get rough. And next week we're going to find out all about those rough things. But we're talking about episode 3. What did everybody think? Episode 3, the Imagineering story, the Midas touch.
I really thoroughly enjoyed this one because I mentioned it during our watch through that I'm a big Eisner fan.
Same.
That's the guy he was in my living room every week.
Yeah.
I know people of a different age talk about Walt being in their living room.
But we couldn't wait to find out what was going to be new because he would excitedly tell us about Alien Encounter or the Indiana Jones Adventure or whatever.
Yeah. And so, he was somebody I knew and grew up with, and when I got older and learned more about it, I learned he was, responsible for that rejuvenation and bringing some of the things I love to Walt Disney World.
Yeah.
The part that fascinates me about this episode, one of the things towards the beginning is I never put that together. How he was the one to kind of bring Disney into pop culture and mix them together and make it like relevant in the time that we're living in.
Yeah.
Not just a fun place to go, but an actual relevant piece of pop culture and Star Wars and Michael Jackson. I never really put it together in my head. I mean, those were two of the biggest things at that time, and he brought them into the parks.
Yeah, no, I jump off on what you were saying. Like, that's exactly what I love about, that era and the era that, this episode's talking about. Because it is very much like Walt's Disney World, or Walt's Disneyland, Roy's Disney World, very the same. And I feel like it was sort of kind of like not a problem, but I feel like there wasn't anything hip, anything, like older kids, like the older crowd of kids didn't want to kind of like go. It was something for like younger kids, or like something like a night out, to go with the wife or the husband or whatever. But like that middle group was very much just like, not really thrills. There's not really anything to do, pretty much. And it's cool to like see that and see how essentially that was pretty much the start of what we have now.
Yeah,
and it's very it's very it's very pop culture.
The infusion of
IPs.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't solely the infusion of IPs, but for sure they were there.
Which is very interesting.
Because like Disneyland, it was cyclical in a lot of ways. Because Disneyland opened, and all those lands were based on things, and for the most part, things he was doing on TV or other projects or movie projects. And then as they got more into the art form and learned how to do new things, they started doing this whole slew of original stuff. And then we come back around when Eisner comes into, let's do these things that people know. But at the same time, they were also doing new original stuff.
Yes.
Excuse me.
And just the fact of wanting to reach out and getting things. Because like you said, Michael Jackson, Star Wars, Alien Encounter, even though that was pretty much,
Well, that was George Lucas. They worked with George Lucas.
Yeah.
Having Lucas and working with people like Francis Ford Coppola and those kind of people, Steven Spielberg. And,
very interesting.
Wanted to work with more
Muppets.
Jim Henson,
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was a lot of things that it wasn't internal and it wasn't things that they were working on, but they didn't have. They didn't have that fear of reaching out and getting things that might appeal to people.
Yeah.
So again, like the other episodes, I think some of the most interesting things is that behind the scenes footage. Yeah. So we get behind the scenes footage of installation of tower, installation of Star Tours. What else we got? The Disneyland Paris, the videos of the construction workers having nothing to do, like the videos that we're not supposed to see, like
all that stuff.
It's
great
fantastic.
Stuff. It's great stuff.
So I think that really tells the story.
Yeah. My only problem this week was I felt like they rushed through some things. I didn't feel like they spent a lot of time on Paris. I didn't feel like they spent a lot of time on Star Tours. I didn't feel like they spent a lot of time on any individual thing. And my problem with that is just the pacing of the series then, at this point. I'm not ecstatic that 2 full episodes are the Iger years, which is a 13-year stretch is split in half, so you're talking like 6-7 years. Yeah. But this show is 1984 to basically like 1995, 96. 12 years in one episode, and they're 12 years of rapid expansion and growth. We skip a lot of ground here. We don't stop and talk about Pleasure Island. We don't talk about water parks. We don't talk about a lot of things. So this is my first real problem with the direction of the series, because I felt like the right amount of time was dedicated to everything before this episode. And I feel like for some reason we've decided the Eisner years needed to be really smushed.
Okay, I mean, I agree with you, but I will say that it felt like a natural starting and ending point of an episode.
Yeah, I agree with that. And maybe that's what they're thinking.
Yeah.
But I feel like knowing the whole story, there were a lot of things I would have liked a little more time on.
Yeah.
Like Tower of Terror felt really short for such a instrumental, such a big thing. Like in studios, like I was more of MGM Studios than I thought we were gonna get, but at the same time, I felt like we skipped over a ton of that part.
Yeah,
that's true.
And I don't know if that was because current management seems to be very on that, and maybe that finally is coming through a bit in this documentary. But yeah, I mean, it's a great episode regardless.
Correct. Yeah.
I don't know. There was a lot of things I thought were really good topics, and we just didn't stop on them long enough.
I mean, overall, it probably is only my third favorite out of the first 3. You know what I mean?
What's your favorite so far, 2?
You know what? I still think it's that first one.
Okay, they're all great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the first one just has so much. It's so much Walt, and it's so much.
That might be my favorite too, honestly.
Yeah, my favorite has to be the first one.
Yeah, I mean, as much as I love Epcot and everything, yeah, I think that first one was such a good start.
So I think this one does a good job at telling the story of Michael's enthusiasm, the willingness to spend money, the willingness to try new things, invent things still during this period.
Yeah.
And I never, I knew things changed after Wells died, but I didn't know why.
Yeah.
I didn't know that was related to we're afraid to spend money now.
Because of Paris.
Well, yeah.
Well, like every Back to the Future segment we've ever done, I feel like there's always that moment where it could be a drinking game. Like, what's the moment where we say, well, then Disneyland Paris happened, and we couldn't do this, and then you take a shot. Yeah.
Well,
like that's what always seems to happen.
It felt to me like they were saying if Frank Wells was still alive, they would have been able to deal with it. Michael ran and hid.
The thing was they were able to deal with it. So it's not completely accurate. Paris is a wreck kind of from 92 to 95. When Space Mountain opens, that turns around.
Okay.
Like they have a couple years of success until economic downturn and Walt Disney Studios Paris. So it's not completely honest at that time, like, because when Frank passes away, like Paris is still a mess, but the next year Space Mountain opens and things start to get rolling again.
Okay.
So the idea is right. They're telling the right story because Frank Wells not being there definitely affects things going forward. And Michael definitely leaves that creative side in a big way in those later years. And I'm sure the next episode's going to talk about that a bunch.
Yeah.
But I think they've rearranged some things for the narrative. And one of them is that Paris just continued to fail. Because Paris bounced back for a bit, and then they had whole new problems. But
yeah. I mean, it's just funny you get to the end of this episode, like, because we're riding kind of high. I mean, Indiana Jones, Tower of Terror.
It's a second golden age.
Opens,
yeah, absolutely.
It's awesome, and then all of a sudden it's like we're at a funeral, and then they tell us stuff that we're like, yeah, that's what's going on right now. Like no,
Yeah. Well, that's like we talk about. Again, not to bring up the history shows, but Back to the Future. What we often say with that segment is, in order to learn where the parks are going in the future, we have to look at the past, and it's cyclical, and that's why very famous saying beyond our realm. Those who do not understand history are doomed to repeat it. That it's true in everything. Yeah. And it's very true in Disney parks. Those who don't, I'm forgetting the wording wrong there, but the idea is there.
Right.
You're doomed to repeat that history if you don't look what happened before. We're heading back into that ditch at full speed, man. You know?
It's like at the beginning of the episode, there was that whole thing about, what's it going to take to do this? More money. All right, let's do it. Yeah. Something cool to just do. At the end of the episode, it was, we can't do anything. Everything has to have a purpose. We can't do anything just because it's cool or innovative or fun. It has to have a purpose and fit in. And then the whole idea of theming. Theming, what is that? We don't worry about theming anymore.
But see what I mean by cyclical? Because it'll be, we know how this story goes. It goes like, Paris and Indian Tower, and then suddenly it's like Journey into Your Imagination. And, and then suddenly after a couple of years you open some parks and they're really unsuccessful, like California Adventure and Studios Paris. And then Iger comes in. It's like, well, you know what the problem was? The problem was we weren't spending enough money.
Right.
And then and then somebody comes in like, we could spend less money. And then you get back down here again. And then you know what? Iger's going to leave, and someone who's going to come in and be like, you know what your problem is? You're not spending enough money. And then we're going to go back up there. Because that's the way this goes. Yeah. But in the process, you always lose something. It's like, you lost Journey to Imagination.
Yeah.
Oh, great movie ride. So how many times eventually everything's going to be gone. Yeah. I can't Country Bear everything, so, yeah, anyway.
Wow. It's a verb now.
Country Bear, Tom Country Bear. Anyway.
But there is very much like parallels between when Walt died and when Wells died.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing that I also find interesting, that like these are the second, not even the second, these are like the third people in command technically, and we have that still same thing, that it's like this person passes away and it's like, what do we do?
Yeah.
And it's so interesting to like figure that out, and it's like who knows what the future holds, but I agree, it is one of those things that it's just like, spend money, don't spend money, spend money. It's like,
that's seems to be the story of the whole, and then it keeps just cycling.
Cycling through,
Cycling, but then now we have those, like I told you, those preview synopses of episodes 5 and 6 worry me. Mm-hmm. Because they seem very, like, triumphant. And I don't feel very triumphant since, like, Pandora opened. I haven't felt triumphant. Pandora was great, and then everything since then has felt very, So I don't know where this whole thing's going to end. It scares me that we're just going to proclaim that Iger was savior and everything's perfect. And certainly those, like that episode 5 where he comes in, it felt that way. Mm-hmm. And that's when the website comes into being. We're covering things, and it certainly felt that way. I think we were very positive until 2017, and then that's when we were like, uh-oh, I don't know. Yeah. This land doesn't have shade.
We'll get to that.
But anyway, this was a good episode.
It was a very good episode. Very good insight into the Eisner years.
Yeah. An enjoyable show.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Looking forward to more. Looking forward to next week and all the turmoil and Animal Kingdom, and it's gonna be fun.
And Joe Rohde's earring.
Joe Rohde, lots of dangling earring.
Oh yeah.
Gotta watch it in 4K.
There's always like a star Imagineer in each episode.
Yeah.
Like this was the Baxter one.
Last one was Marty.
Right. Oh, Marty was heavy in a lot of that one. Yeah.
Sure.
There seems to be one that sticks out. That they use a lot.
The one yeah.
Yeah,
that's so fun.
Whatever.
All right, so we'll see you next week with episode 4, the Imagineering story. And that's it. Well, thank you to everybody who joined us live. We appreciate it. Let us know if you enjoyed this or if you didn't. It's something new we're trying out, and Don't forget that our 50-hour continuous live show begins next Friday, November 29th at 9 p.m. Kicks off with WDW News Tonight live from this studio. 2 hours of that, and then 48 hours of a whole lot of other things.
How come we didn't build in episode 4 watch into the...
We didn't know, so now we have to.
Yeah.
We got to figure that out. We're going to look at the schedule and figure that. Actually, as soon as we're done, you and I are going to figure that out. He's like, oh, more stuff to do in that 50-hour period. What have I done? But anyway, thank you all for watching, and we'll hopefully see you starting next Friday. 50 hours will be live on YouTube and on wdwnt.com. No, not on Snapchat.
Vimo.
You know, the WDWNT story is going to be a fascinating document.
I drive.
Country Bear is going to be a whole episode. Yeah. Go end this. Go turn this off.
Do I have that power?
I don't know. I don't know if Jason turned us off yet. I'm just going to keep talking to people until I'm sure we're off. Microphones! Yep. You're so easily amused. But yeah, hopefully some of you liked it. Hopefully someone watched. Hopefully we weren't just talking to a camera.
You're going off now.
Oh, we're going off. Bye, everybody.